Alchemy anchors every mage's craft in this magical realm. Sorcerer Rusty conjures his daily quota of distilled water with surgical precision. It's the raw fire behind every potion brewed and the force that remakes magical creatures. Rusty doesn't just distill water, he injects crackling magical energy into every drop, turning it into a far superior product. Rusty nails his deadline, kills the timer, and rips into an afternoon of the research he lives for. The mood snaps when the alchemist Realism calls out to him. The sallow, smug man sneers and hurls savage insults at Rusty. Realism sneers at Rusty for toiling in the basic research department, slamming it as pointless and unprofitable, yet it plainly grasps that research exists to explore and discover. Rusty shrugs off the taunts like rain off armor, calm and unbothered. He's been through this before. Then Realism snaps him into action. Visit the president who wants to discuss some matters. Rusty, the talented alchemist, storms toward the president's office, heart racing as he sizes up his place on the team and endures the sting of their relentless mockery. Unlike Rusty, Realism crushes it in the cash-soaked arms department, so everyone rushes to pile on, deriding him for pulling in almost no revenue. Rusty storms into the president's office and learns the president has decided to axe the basic research departments. The budget was obliterated, dissolving completely into nothing. The president slams down his case, brandishing the department's failure to turn a profit as his justification. They banished Rusty to menial chores across other departments, turning him into their errand boy. The president barks that he should be grateful for any job, smugly declaring he's doing him a favor. He blasts a cloud of pipe smoke into Rusty's face and waves him off. Rusty shuts up, seeing no point in arguing. Clutching the letter, Rusty storms out, humiliation burning and self-blame knotting in his gut, and on the walk back to his quarters he remembers the president's pipe, like so many tools, was built by the research department. Rusty sits in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Ever since the new president took over the department's budget and staff were gutted, Rusty has been shouldering the entire workload and its crushing stress alone. A sharp ring from his phone yanks him back to reality. A new message blinks and he snatches the device to check it. Even the telecommunications device had been forged by his own department, a bitter proof of how they'd been mistreated. Then a sudden flash of good news struck him and lifted his spirits. A message slammed into my phone from Colin, my closest friend from school, the guy I haven't seen since graduation. She exploded into a celebrated warrior after dominating the recent war. Her research post lay rusting as she slogged through a neglected lab under an indifferent president. His mind flashes back to school with Colin. They transformed the classroom into a full-blown jungle, then had to write a painfully long apology to their teacher for the prank. A smile flickers across Rusty's face as she rips open the letter and reads Holland's warm welcome to Rust, his words brimming with fierce, unwavering respect. She was granted a dominion on the borderlands and now calls on him to help tame its wilds and forge it into a stronghold. The offer thrusts Rusty into a make-or-break choice. He can either stay holed up in his rundown apartment, swallowing the relentless abuse from Mr. Fatty and Mr. I don't give a damn. Or he can torch his past, seize Tala's proposal and follow her into the unknown. Grin blazing and a spark in his eyes, Rusty stares out the window and vows to tear himself free from his miserable job and this dreadful place, determined to chase joy with Tala. Decision made, Rusty jams his belongings into boxes, memories crashing back of when he was the department's eldest before the new president took over. It's that bond that keeps him clinging to the old place. Master Hall Hammer, the former president, rose from nothing into a self-made powerhouse who lived and breathed fundamental research. Together, they blaze past every limit and pull off feats that leave everyone speechless. When the government flipped, they ripped Master Hall Hammer down the ladder, shoved a former official into his chair, and the whole workplace collapsed into chaos. Rusty bolts for the president's office, then stops dead as muffled voices seep under the door. Realism and the president pour over the research department's budget. Realism showers the president with so much fawning praise it borders on slapstick. It screams like a third grader trying too hard to please, a shrill, desperate sound that grates on your ears. I, irritated but composed, slapped a rasping knock on the rusted door, and the two inside bristled when they learned it was corroded. They erupted into a barrage of shouts, spewing toxic attitudes. Unfazed, Rusty brazenly angles his resignation across the president's desk and snarls that he's done with them. In a moment of pure defiance, Rusty launches a devastating move that shatters doubt and commands thunderous respect. Dumbfounded by the sudden move, the president snatched up the resignation letter and read it with cold, unblinking realism. With the department dissolved, Rusty can walk away on his own terms, no need to train a replacement. The president forced a calm mask, but frustration simmered beneath it. His irritation bled through every tight smile and clenched jaw. The president snaps at Rusty, "If you don't value our generosity, leave the association immediately," and dismisses him in a hot, husky tone. Rusty burst from the president's office, lingering inside the building for a heartbeat before he stepped out. He stops dead, eyes fixed on a grand painting of an alchemist in a dungeon. Memories crash over him, he whispers a farewell and strides away. Outside, Rusty gulped the fresh air, euphoria exploding through him as he finally stood free of the association's crushing pressures and troubles. He bellows, channels raw power, and tears an 8-legged hippopotamus beast into existence. He sprinted toward Talon, his senses snapping to attention as danger laced the air. Even his hippo snaps to attention at a strange noise in the distance. Rusty barks at his beast to stay sharp, bandits might be nearby. He froze in his tracks when he spotted an unconscious figure sprawled in the park, edging closer with every nerve screaming and every step wary. Rusty crept closer, heart pounding, and the dark vestments shouted the truth. This was a night priest, a devotee of the goddess of vengeance. Rusty flips the unconscious figure onto her back and freezes at a jagged cursed sigil carved across her face. She's been seized by a vicious spell. Another damsel in distress cries out, thrusting us headfirst into a pulse-pounding chapter. Instinct snapping, Rusty unleashes his power and fires up a transcription. A pamphlet blooms over the girl's body, hovering as it lays bare the exact condition of her affliction. Rusty snatches the pamphlet, devours its pages, and zeroes in on the detour. He concluded the girl's life wasn't in danger, the curses were manageable and a specialist could help, but watching her writhe in agony tore him apart. Rusty refuses to stand by, he takes matters into his own hands, unwilling to let her suffer. He rips through the diagnosis and finds the fever is poison coursing through her system. He zeroes in on a wound on her flank, the exact breach where the poison slipped in. The mark screams familiar. Rusty rips open his bag and scrabbles for an antidote but comes up empty. He steels himself and vows to craft one with his own hands. He snaps a command to his hippo, shield the injured Geels. He sprints out to grab the necessary ingredients. Rusty tears through the forest, eyes hunting every leaf for the plants he needs, while Sin gasps winded and sinks to a knee to rebuild his strength. Confinement in the association drained his endurance. Within minutes he was panting like an elderly man, so he snatched a stamina potion and downed it. Energy crackles through you as luck pounces the moment your eyes lock on medicinal herbs clinging to the stream's bank. Rusty rides up to the spot, puzzled. This place used to overflow with greenery, now it's stripped bare. Someone's been harvesting the plants regularly. Rusty bolts through the wilds, plucking the exact herbs and blossoms needed to brew the antidote. He realized one single, simple transmutation would be enough for her condition. He channels his power, ingredients, water droplets, and the scroll lift, spin, and slam together, fusing into the perfect cure. After a lifetime crafting antidotes, Russ tears through this task with effortless precision. Potion ready, he bolts back to the poisoned girls, heavy stomps thundering as he nears and finds his hippo leaping, smashing a dark, grotesque thing into the ground. Rusty hangs back, every nerve screaming, determined not to be crushed beneath the hippo's stomping legs. The hippo rockets one last, earth-shaking leap and crushes the creature beneath its 8 hulking legs. Rusty rushes into the stunned aftermath, relief surging as the thrashing finally cuts out. He watches his beast rip the familiar apart, the thing that chased the girls lies dead, likely finished off. He drops to his knees and presses the antidote into the girl's wound. It knits shut in an instant as brilliant sparkles erupt around her. Her eyes snapped open, instincts flaring, she shot upright and her hands darted to the sword's hilt. Shoulders coiled, stance a locked blade and gaze razor-sharp, every inch of her screams battle-hardened night as she sizes Rust up, testing whether he's a foe. Rusty jabbed a finger at the lifeless familiar and snapped, it was the enemy. She whips a glance over her shoulder then snaps, who are you? Rusty steadies his voice, about to say he's from the association, then bites it back and pivots. I'm just a wandering alchemist, he says, the correction slipping out smooth. Alchemist sparks fierce curiosity in her and she steps straight toward him. The lingering poison claws at her, draining her strength and nearly bringing her to her knees. Rusty clamps a hand on her shoulder, voice sharp as steel, "Don't strain yourself," and thrusts the antidote into her palm. She sizes it up and demands the price for his help, and she's right. Rust, unused to getting paid for helping others, freezes. Memories of his days at the association flashback as he scratches his head, visibly puzzled. He tells the girls he pulled her out of goodwill. She announces herself as Tala, a knight sworn to the goddess of vengeance and the third of 3 swords, declaring the antidote priceless and demanding there must be a way to repay him for his kindness. Rusty hatches a daring plan. Bound for the northern borderlands to work under Tala, he begs her to lend her sword's strength to guard his back if trouble strikes. Tala agrees, flashes her blade, and declares it will cleave any threat that dares come his way. Rusty cranks out a simple potion while Tala vows her formidable sword to fight at his side, an outrageously lopsided bargain. Rusty doesn't linger, he locks his gaze on Tala as she finishes the antidote. Poison ripped free from her veins, finally purged. She vaults onto this hippo's broad back and bids her a fierce farewell. Tala clutched the potion container, eyes locked as sunlight set it gleaming. She hailed it as a legendary elixir that yanked her back from the brink of death. Now she owes everything to that shadowy stranger. She vows to ride north to his door once she exacts her vengeance, hoping to repay him lavishly. Night falls, Rust presses on until he decides to camp. Rusty vaults off his hippo, commands it to rest, then kindles a crackling campfire. He ripped himself away from Tala and barreled north without pausing until darkness swallowed the sky. He drinks in the story sky as a vast darkness devours the horizon. Seated in the fire's warmth, a rare calm anchors him. Since joining the association, Russ Knight has been trapped inside a sterile lab, cut off from nature's beauty. He rips a map from his pack and slams it open, fingers racing along the route to see how far he still is from the borderland. They stumbled into the second-to-last village clinging to the border of the Northern Territory. Eyes glued to the map, he barely notices his hippo edge in for a sneaky nibble. Rust springs into action, chuckling as he orders the beast to settle down. He rips into his portable rations and devours them, his trusty companions on the road. The next morning they stumbled into Toma, a crumbling, hollowed-out village far from what Rusty expected. It stood nearly abandoned, a hollow echo of Tala's domain. Rusty sends his hippo lumbering back and charges out to scour the area. A man materializes behind him, jolting Rusty as the stranger snaps, "Who are you?" Rusty tossed out that he was a traveling alchemist, and a man's eyes snapped to the word alchemist like a drawn blade. He grabs Rusty's arm and hustles him forward, urging him to follow as they walk straight to the village chief. Rusty's chest tightened as he took in the town. Most houses stood abandoned, their walls cracked and roofs sagging into ruin. Until his gaze locks on a single, spotless house, its entrance braided with woven branches. Rusty barrels forward, eyes fixed on the biggest hut, and snaps, "Is this the chief's house? Where do we find a Kajero tree?" The man snubs him, hammers on the door, and bellows for the chief to come meet the alchemist. An elderly man, supported by a weathered wooden cane, shuffles into view. The man thunders, "I've brought an alchemist to the chief." He admits he can't be sure Rusty is an alchemist, but Rusty's every move screams it, a grim sign of how desperate the village has become. Rusty slams his ID down, the official seal proclaiming him an alchemist. The chief snatches up the medallion, studies its crest with a hard glare and snaps, "Is Rusty high-ranking?" Russ, who'd never imagined it, reels as the truth slams into him. He's undeniably a highly ranked alchemist. Many at the association were cut from the same cloth. The chief beckoned Rusty into his home, voice tight and urgent. He had one burning question for him. Steam spirals as someone offers them a gigantic mug brimming with tea. Rusty finally lifts a steaming cup to his lips, relief exploding through him after surviving on nothing but field rations for days. The chief snaps at Rusty, demanding, "Do you have any traditional magic crystals?" Confusion flickers across Rusty's face, but he swallows it and dives headfirst into hunting down, or forging, the crystals. I blurted, "Why cling to the old-fashioned ones?" The chief snapped that the magic guns had been upgraded during the war almost a year ago. "Hold up, why the hell is an old man like you arming himself with guns?" The chief snaps that he'd supplied Zala, the pale man, from day one with both the old and new magic guns, and he growls the new batch was a flat-out scam. Zala whips out both kinds of guns. The chief thunders, revealing how those weapons stood like iron shields between helpless villagers and ravenous beasts. The 32 gun claimed the crown, sipping fuel and bristling with brilliant features. The latest one model burst at the seams with problems. It bled your wallet dry, its crystals were absurdly expensive, shattered nonstop, and the whole thing kept failing. Then the maker pulled the plug on the old crystals, forcing villagers to cough up for the shiny new model and watch their coins go up in smoke. That unleashed a relentless surge of beast attacks that kept claiming lives. Rusty leans in, soaks up their fears, then nods and vows to forge the old crystals. He asks Kodro to leave his payment. The chief and Zal gape, exchanging confused glances. He flashed a grin and vowed to lead him straight to the cargo trees. They arrive and the chief roars for everyone to scramble and haul in every cargo material and fruit they can find. Rusty springs into action, yanking 3 scrolls free and diving straight into the work. Watch him flaunt his skills. He's learned that magic stones come from beasts. Hold up, there's another method that hijacks the atmosphere, bending its elements to your will. He rips open a kagra fruit, mixes it into the brew, and purifies the elements until a flawless diamond crystallizes. Rusty thunders that magic crystals obey 3 iron rules: size, output, and capacity, and they have to lock into perfect alignment. Skip that and they'll grind to a halt. Rusty's memory snaps. He recalls the standards for old-style crystals and weaponizes them into a decisive advantage. Kegger fruit swallows the magic elements whole and forges them into a pulsing magic crystal. Light, power, and brilliance blaze around Rusty as he rips through the task with razor-sharp skill and rock-steady confidence. He finishes and lifts the crystal into his palm, pride roaring through him as villagers behind him explode into cheers, awestruck by his magic while their crystals glint, ready. Rusty slams a cartridge into the chief's hand and orders him to chamber the 32 and take a shot. The chief nods, takes the gun, and inserts the crystal. He points it at the sky and fires. The gun roars, spitting a bullet that streaks with impossible speed and rips a huge hole in the sky as clouds whirl around it. Everyone gasps, then explodes into cheers. Now they can live free from fear of beasts and magical creatures. Rusty beams, heart soaring as the villagers erupt in celebration over his creation, and a hard-earned peace settles into his bones. He plunged into crafting crystal after crystal, and an hour of relentless toil later, it cranks out enough bounty to sustain the villagers for years. Crystal roared with twice the power the market could muster. The chief's eyes snapped wide at the mention of that extraordinary offer. He reels at the thought of such wealth. His people have been crushed by poverty for generations with no one to lift a hand. The chief hunched over the glittering crystals, schemes sparking in his mind until he sank into a whirlpool of ways to use them. Tom snapped over the chief like steel. He barked for everyone to gather the crystals and haul them back to the village. Rusty locks eyes with the chief and pleads for a private word about something urgent. The chief agrees they must speak in private. He beckons Rusty to follow him home, orders the villagers to clear the rubble, and Rusty charges in, clearing it in moments. They step into the chief's house. Rusty is handed a cup of tea and a mug, their poverty glaringly obvious, and when he sips the warm tea, a blissful warmth floods through him. Maybe this is the prize we earned after a day's brutal toil. He slides the mug aside, his grin dying as he goes stone-cold serious. The chief's jaw clenches, eyes flickering like alarms. He's bracing for bad news. But Rusty Consum waved it off, declaring it's not a grave issue. He zeroes in on what comes next for them and refuses to talk about anything else. The chief had feared Rusty would storm in, demanding payment for every crystal. Now he feels like he just dodged a full-blown crisis. Rusty reveals he forged a hoard of crystals big enough to keep a village alive for years, and he's hunting down which villages still cling to those outdated magic crystals. The chief's voice cut through the air. Every village in this isolated area desperately needs these crystals, and Rusty could be the help that saves them. Rusty strikes a cocky, triumphant pose and booms that he'll conduct business with a new nighttime realm called Colin, from where he'll grow his crystal trade. The name Colin snaps the chief upright. Rusty isn't just a master alchemist, he stands shoulder to shoulder with the era's most fearsome legendary warriors. The chief snaps, is this the Colin who can send 3 armored men flying with a single swing of his sword? She looks fragile but wields a strength that shatters even the greatest fighters. That's how she earned her nickname. Rusty explodes into the conversation, cuts them off and snarls he won't hear that nickname again. He's sick of it being hurled at him 1,000 times. The nickname twists his old academy friends into monsters. The chief blurts sorry, and Rusty snaps the conversation back to the topic. He's desperate to drag the chief's lord into the shadows and spill this in a whisper. Forging a new domain rips open your wallet and drops you into a gauntlet of costly, relentless challenges. He hasn't even told Colin yet, and she could already be scheming to pull him into her plans. Rusty swallowed another sip of tea, hope flaring as he pictured Colin and the village lord crafting a deal to tip fate in his and the villagers' favor. Rusty unleashed a torrent of magic crystals, enough for everyone. The chief might thrust offerings before the lord and clinch a pact that tips everything in our favor. Russ's mind ignites into razor-sharp focus, and he instantly asks for it. The chief thrust a pen and paper into his hands to draft a letter to a friend. Their old academy buddy now serves in the military. Guns and magic crystals dragged them straight into the line of fire. Rusty scans the horizon for objections and arms himself to crush anything that dares block his climb to success. Individuals like Realism, whose entire operation and prosperity draw their lifeblood from the crystals and guns Rusty funnels to them, could suddenly grind to a halt. Realism hoards his achievements, refusing to share them with anyone, especially Russ, whom he eviscerated with a searing insult. Rusty brushes off the fool. He's laser-focused on building an empire and won't give petty, insignificant people the time of day. He knows the crystals could burst past the region and snag Realism and his crew's attention. If they catch wind of it, the military could descend and unleash chaos no one can predict. So Rusty inks the last line and rolls the formal letter into a tight tube. He slams his pendant into the wax, leaving its initials as a bold badge that proclaims his high rank. He starts for the door, but the chief implores Rusty to stay the night. Rusty flashes a polite grin and refuses, itching to press on and streak off down the road. Bessie explodes out the door and is swallowed by villagers, all pleading for help with their tasks. Overwhelmed and rusty, he yanks something onto his head in a heartbeat. Popo bolts out of the village to avoid being delayed. These villagers are maddeningly intrusive. Rusty barrels through the wasteland and skids to a stop at the eerie silence. No beasts, no creatures, and that void leaves him blind to the monsters that might be lying in wait. Suddenly a monster lunges from the shadows. Popo's keen senses snap awake. He pulverizes the monster's writhing tentacles, shattering them and toppling the beast in an instant. Rusty rips into Popo, denouncing him on the spot, then salvages the fallen monster's remains and tucks them away. They could be useful later. He traces the map with a finger. The blue markings shout that a body of water lies just ahead. From there, the journey becomes a lightning-fast sprint. Rusty barrels up to the lake and vows to crash into a hard-earned rest. Restlessness claws at Popo, turning him into a razor-edged bundle of nerves. The water roils, spilling a crackling magical aura. Rusty edges closer to investigate. A tiny lizard rockets out, skimming his cheek as it writhes, fighting to break free from the monster's slick tentacles lunging after it. The hapless lizard snaps into the snare, shooting a desperate, terrified look at Rusty. A single question slams into him: is this a child twisted into a lizard, its eyes inhuman and its face stripped of every emotion? Rusty freezes, refusing to touch or save the creature. Too many beasts fake human feelings to lure you close and strike. In the wild, only the strong survive while predators pick off the weak. Even now, the lizard's eyes lock onto Russ and won't let go. He roared at Popo to smash the writhing tentacles and tear the lizard free this instant. Popo needs no second command and catapults into the air like an 8-lated ballerina, weighing over 500 kilograms. He shatters the tentacle gripping the lizard, which retreats into the water, injured. Rusty snatches the severed tentacle, pockets it for later use, and drops to his knees to check the lizard. He jabbed it with a feather-light prod. It didn't so much as twitch. The lizard staggers and collapses, utterly spent, every last ounce of energy drained from its body. He ignites his ability and unleashes a blinding scan that lays the creature bare, every muscle, every threat. The beast's feral chaos hides the flaw and leaves him scrambling to find the true problem. Then he breaks through the fog and unlocks fierce new facets of his skills. And finds the lizard utterly spent, every movement sapped by crushing exhaustion. Maybe its mitochondria are sputtering, choking off its power. Exhaustion gnawed at them after they burned too much energy dodging hunters. Rusty barked at Popo to stay vigilant. The little beast rockets into the churning water and clashes head-on with a hulking catfish monster while Rusty frantically searches for a way to restore the lizard's health. Hippo vanquishes the catfish monster, hoists its limp bulk, and parades it before his master like a triumphant trophy. Rusty dabs a potion onto the lizard and beams as its strength slowly crawls back into its limbs. Its mitochondria roared to life, activity surging so hard it may already be exceeding normal levels. He reaches to leave the lizard behind, then freezes. After risking everything to save it, the thought of another predator swooping in and killing it pins him in place. Rusty resolves to carry the unconscious lizard, cradling its limp body on his lap for the rest of the journey. He yanks his map open, plots the remaining route, and knows he must follow the river from the pond to reach his destination. Rusty thundered into the campsite ringed with circle tents, convinced it belonged to Colin. Hippo froze in his tracks, bristling with a raw, flashing unease. Progress slams to a stop, and Russ, no fool, senses that something's off. He vaults off his beast, hoists his medallion high, and roars, "I am Russ." A master-ranked alchemist, he forges a sect that draws every truth-hungry soul into its fold. He answers the night Colin's summons and plunges into this land. Rusty wasn't a fool, but he looked unhinged, bellowing at the sky, eyes wild as he waited for his medallion. Suddenly 2 girls burst in, their faces half-wrapped in cloths, looking like a one-eyed cat sticking out its tongue. "Well done, Colin, very smooth." Gerald ripped her sword free, then flashed a sharp grin and greeted Russ. He snarled a warning: "Monsters in the area can flawlessly mimic humans, forcing us to take ruthless, uncompromising precautions." Rusty finally clicked. Hippo had been on edge because he'd felt danger from afar, and if Hippo hadn't stopped them, those girls could have lunged. Huck snapped the medallion into his pocket, chin lifted and confidence blazing straight at the 2 girls. The girls froze, jaws dropping. He'd sniffed them out in a heartbeat. He keeps acting cool. One Gerald suddenly detects an overwhelming aura seething from Hippo, and Whirly shouts, "Is a monster on that beast's back." She lunged, ready to strike, but Eerie slammed into her and stopped her mid-attack. Rusty steps forward like a guardian, claiming the lizard as his and swearing it won't hurt anyone. She lounges, totally calm, while he locks onto the younger sister's strange power. Her eyes see things no one else can. The younger might pierce distant horizons with its sight, while the older sizes up the raw power in people and beasts. Introductions wrapped, the girls sweep Rusty into a tent where he's real as dozens man a colossal communications array, funneling every scrap of data straight back to headquarters. He's blown away by the top-tier work and the roster of insanely skilled people working here. He watches the operations when Colin calls from behind and bolts toward him, bursting with excitement. Colin hasn't aged a day, still strikingly beautiful. She closed the distance to Rusty and seized his hand in a firm, unyielding grip. A sharp sting makes him wince, poor Russ, who's gone years without female company, while Colin bursts with joy at finally reuniting with Rusty after so long and ribs him about looking older. Rusty bristled at the remark and forced a calm mask, while Collins burst onto the scene, radiant and impossible to ignore. She snaps, asking if her masked girls gave him any trouble, jabbing a finger at the 2. Rusty snaps to the truth. Colin engineered their run-in to chase a thrill. This was clearly her idea of fun. Rusty rakes his fingers through his hair, swearing up and down there was no trouble with the girls. He's a lover, not a fighter. "Knock off the fuss, Russ. Wait, my mistake. It's Colin." Smiles, "Sorry." She whispers, beckoning him to follow her on a tour of the camp. Am I the only one who feels Colin practically overflowing with nurturing energy? Magic roars across the world, corrupting soil, warping animals, and birthing monsters. So why do humans walk through it unscathed? Back at the camp, Colin hoists an entire table with one hand like it's a twig, clearing space for her and Rusty to sit and talk business. She snaps, "Fetch tea," at Rohan, orchestrating the moment so the tent clears and it's just the 2 of them. Rusty senses his old friend leaned in, eyes stormy. He was about to reveal something serious. He laughed, saying he'd thought the job would mean kicking back and plucking magical elements straight out of the earth. Colin shrugs and laughs, admits there's truth to the jab, but the role hides far more than it shows. She crowns him the Academy's genius, a nickname forged in their school days. Heat rising to his cheeks, Russ pins down his embarrassment and fires, "What's troubling you?" Colin twirls her gloves between his fingers, then reveals he must. They bolted to treat the sickness ravaging the camp, then hunted down where it came from. Tasks nailed, Rusty sprang to his feet and was briskly escorted to his tent. As he moves on, the air goes icy, strangers shoot him cold glares and flat out ignore his friendly greetings, their hostility crackling, and Rusty snaps to the truth. The disease is endemic here. Newcomers to the camp begin to succumb to illness, symptoms creeping over them one by one. At the tent, Rusty exhales, relieved. The 2 girls seem to treat him better than the others. He's dead wrong. The younger sister snapped, "Don't you dare humiliate Lady Colin or I won't forgive you," and with that she and her sister vanished. Rusty feels the cold truth slam into him. he'll have to dig deeper than he'd ever imagined to earn the camp's trust. He swept into the cavernous tent, empty of furniture, just as he'd expected from Colin, who knows he prefers his own. Rusty unleashed his powers, summoning a plush carpet and a pillowy beanbag for the lizard to curl up on. Drained to its last scale, the lizard slept straight through the entire journey. Rusty slams his hand to the earth and summons Manifest Rose, a transmuted beast, plant-like in form but hippo-strong, a chunk of raw nature come alive. He snaps an order and the rose obeys, weaving a sturdy bed where the lizard can rest undisturbed. Moments later, Rusty snapped an order to set up a bed for the patients who will come to his tent for treatment. He sets the plan in motion with a single nod. Rowan and Eerie spring into action, ushering patients in one by one for care. He leans in as their nearly identical complaints spill out: fatigue, body aches, and soreness. Rusty thrusts vials into their hands, quelling symptoms and forcing the disease's secret into the open. Side effects might strike, but he'll crush them later. Right now, delivering the proper treatment is the top priority. Rowan's jaw drops as Rusty races through the ward, somehow treating nearly all the patients before sunset. After treating the final patient, he dives into the files and hammers out a detailed report cataloging every symptom and potential side effect. Rusty thrusts a glowing vial into weary Rohan's hand, promising a sudden surge of energy to wipe out his bone-deep fatigue. She gulps it down, life surges back into her like a jolt. She stammers a quick thank you to him and bolts out. Rusty reaches out, craving connection, but the others keep their distance, cold, guarded, slow to thaw. He finishes the report, slams it shut, and charges off to meet Colin. Along the way, healed workers surged forward, voices erupting with gratitude as they thanked him for curing them. They smirked, of course, they expected nothing less from Colin's friend. At his old job, praise barely ever came. Rusty's efforts went unnoticed, and now appreciation finally hits him like a spotlight. Night crashed down on the campsite and he tore toward Colin's tent. He slips inside and locks eyes with the captivating Colin, who snaps, "Why are you visiting so late?" He thrusts the report he'd prepared into her hands. Colin rips through it, impressed by his own razor-sharp efficiency, while her striking eyes shine with grateful warmth. Rusty shrugs off his role, but a thunderous stomach roar and jittery hands betray him. Rups cracked a joke that sent Colin into warm, genuine laughter, and she confessed she hadn't laughed like that in ages. Russ's charm was impossible to deny. Fed up, the next day Rohan and Eerie hustled Rusty into the food storage to uncover the truth. Moments before he leaves, he bellows, summoning Hippo to carry them away. At the storehouse, Rusty plants his feet, clutching his pendulum and sending it swinging to read the thick, buzzing density of magic gathered just outside. Magic surges, the pendulum slashes into wider arcs, and Rusty feverishly jots the readings across his scroll. He circled the storehouse, feeling the earth thrum with concentrated magic so lethal germs couldn't survive, leaving the area shockingly sterile. The monitors scream with wild spikes, and he suspects Rohan might be assisting. A pleasant surprise cracked through his usual aloofness. The Rusty lasts chuckled, thrilled by the unexpected collaboration. The master alchemist's eyes blaze as he senses magical elements packed so densely they saturate every inch. Folks stash food in a half-basement, letting its cool, shadowed air lock freshness in and spoilage out. Out in the wild, raging magical currents wipe out germs on contact, so cooking becomes a trusted ritual that guarantees your food is safe. Denial spreads through the town. Nobody will admit that local, food-borne germs hiding in their meals are the ones making everyone sick. Rusty squints, wondering if remnants of the monster that once nested in the storehouse are behind this. He'd march up to Rowan and demand a straight answer. Was this a monster's nest, and if so, what kind of beast lived here? He grins, itching to watch Rowan react to the probing question, and Rowan snaps that the nest belonged to a bear. The hint ignites Russ's burning curiosity about the creature. Their chat screeches to a halt when a man strides up. He blurts, "You're Master Rusty, aren't you?" then clasps his hands and pours out thanks for helping his younger brother. The man reveals his brother's limb numbness was crippling, but Russ' treatment surged in and dramatically restored his feeling. His family beams with gratitude, and he vows to tackle anything Rusty needs to show his thanks. Rusty smirks, certain the brother was one of the patients he treated yesterday. Rusty presses to inspect the food storehouse's interior. The man opens the door and leads him inside. Or Rusty rakes the room with razor focus, his gaze locking onto a chaotic spread of different foods. From monster-forged cuts to lush plant-grown vegetables and hearty cereals, every ingredient gets processed right here. Rusty scoffs that a storehouse stacked with monster ingredients reads like the punchline to a terrible joke, then inspects the stock and finds the food eerily pristine. No poison, no trace of monster residue. Rusty fires a quick thanks, steps aside, and lets the man lock up while he strides out. Harry snaps, "Can we rule out the storehouse as the source of the disease?" Rusty fires a warning, he's not sure yet, and demands we dig deeper. Eerie, the older sister, narrowed her eyes and snapped, "Where to next?" Rusty jabbed at the purifying water jug used for drinking and cooking, declaring it their next stop. They close in on the jug that doles out Colin's scarce water to every corner of his domain. Rusty taps the jug's battered skin, flips the switch, and the purifier spits out crystal-clear water. He finds no faulty components. Rusty craves clarity. If this mystery ran as clear as the water in the jugs, the case would be simple. The disease leaves victims numb, so he pins it on poison and tears through rations and upends every water jug hunting for traces. Cold certainty hits him, the solution won't come without a fight. Rowan cuts through the chatter and blurts, "Is it time for a lunch break?" He jolts Rusty with a sudden shock, blurts a reluctant yes, and bristles at the insistence on stopping for lunch. Boom, it hits him. Colin must have ordered the sisters to trail him and make sure he actually ate. Rusty flashes back to the night Colin Force pressed a sandwich into his hands while they burned through a brutal research marathon at the academy. The sisters hustled him to the camp cafeteria, pointing to a nearby tent where the food was being prepared. Right before he dug in, he turned to Sippo and fired, "What do you want to eat?" He recoiled, jaw-dropping. His own pet has better eating habits than he does. Rusty whips up the hippo's favorite meal, grinding magic stones to dust and folding in grass pellets. He knows transmuted beasts demand a carefully balanced magic intake. The feast fits the hippo perfectly. It shoves its snout in and ravenously devours every last bite. Then the sisters rush in bearing Russ's meal. Brace yourself, the main dish ripped straight from hunted monsters explodes onto the table. Smoke for preservation. A plate of sizzling, fried edible bits ripped from local plant monsters slammed onto the table beside a steaming bowl of finely crushed dried cereals. The menu's basic, but the cooks squeeze a bit more flavor out of every dish. Rusty fires off, "Does everyone eat in the cafeteria?" And Rohan answers that families usually eat at home. Most single people meet their end in the cafeteria. Rusty is yanked back to the academy's cafeteria. Everyone eats in silence while the sisters' masked stares drill into him. He snaps, "Did you spot any common thread among the patients, or did any new cases pop up today?" Eerie hints he slammed the brakes on work every time a meal arrived. She hasn't heard of a single new case, and she can't spot any pattern tying the patients together. Rusty locks onto Eerie's comment that many patients are single. Eerie cuts in, "Not a LAR," and that observation slams home. Rowan grins and proclaims, "She hauled patients all the way from the singles tent." Russ's curiosity ignited. He began to suspect a pattern. The singles always ate in the cafeteria. He frantically transcribes his thoughts, and Rusty, digging through the pages, uncovers something. He barks at the sisters, "Stop eating." He pins down trace amounts of a monster's neurotoxic poison in the food, the exact culprit behind the victim's symptoms. Riley grinned and declared that breakthroughs can strike even during lunch breaks. As Rusty picks apart the rations with laser focus, Eerie slams a palm down and shouts at everyone in the tent to stop eating. They spotted a chilling clue, possible poisoning. Rusty snaps that many of the patients came from the singles tent and used the cafeteria, and since the water purification is fine, he's zeroing in on the source. The sisters exchange baffled looks as the kitchen manager strides up and asks about the food issue. Rusty flashes a quick, apologetic bow for the sudden summon, introduces himself, and declares he's been sent by Lady Collins to hunt down the disease. He demands a full inspection of the kitchen, hellbent on proving his theory. Inside, Russ's console erupts, each reading nails his suspicions. He grabs Rohan, urges him to rush the message to Colin, then locks eyes with the kitchen manager and demands she act immediately. She agrees, and Rusty snaps that she must be at Colin's tent in an hour to get the full explanation. An hour later, everyone, including the singles tent manager and the kitchen manager, pours into Colin's tent. Colin snaps at Rusty, demanding, "Did you stamp out the epidemic?" Rust, feeling heroic, flashed a small, proud smile. He explains a lake upstream from the camp's river hides a monster, its neurotoxic poison seeping in and corrupting the water. Purified drinking water isn't the problem, It's the water you use to wash dishes and do laundry. Colin snaps, that's the water they use for those tasks, and Rusty slams the evidence down, microscopic traces of the poison on the single's tent tableware and clothing. It slips in through the skin and mouth, amassing inside until it erupts into disease. His discovery slams into the room, leaving everyone stunned and those who missed it burning with shame. Collins cuts through the panic, voice steady, insisting the purified water is too scarce for anything but rationing. No one here should blame themselves. Colin owns up, she split the water evenly, and now she vows to rework the distribution across every facility and hunt down the upstream monster responsible for the poison. Rusty grins and drops the truth. He already obliterated the monster while snatching the white lizard to safety. He blew everyone's minds even further. Colin cracks a grin and ribs Rusty, laughing, "Can you see the future?" She worked the wards through the night, then the next day zeroed in on the disease's source and obliterated the monster. She finds his speed almost cheeky. Rusty snaps, dead serious, the poison source is gone. The water'll be safe soon. Popo gives the all clear, declaring no other monsters lurk in the pond. Facing Colin, Rusty plants his feet, locks eyes and roars, "My task is complete." His electrifying work sparks fierce admiration in her, and she pours out deep, heartfelt thanks. Rusty warns, this disease ignites from the tiniest trace of toxin, so cases could surge. He swore he'd treat anyone struck down and told Colin to send anyone feeling ill straight to him. They ring, instantly agree, then press hard to upgrade the purification jug. Rusty consents, will explode into action the instant adequate funding arrives. Colin vows to arm him with whatever he needs, and Rusty erupts into a grin, riding the pure high of completing his first mission. He yearns for the wild life of the borderland, yet simmering troubles at the Alchemist Association keep him on edge. Later in Rohan, Ari bursts onto the scene and declares who she is. "I barreled down Portman Street in the capital, hunting for the huge water jug Rusty had asked me to fetch." They traded impressions as they watched Russ. Harry felt the man's immense combat strength crash over him the instant he appeared, nothing like any other alchemist. She's convinced that even standing shoulder to shoulder they couldn't touch him, and she suspects that belief has Rohan torn up about Russ. Harry inches toward confessing their feelings, but he senses Rohan bottling hers. They burst into a store to snag the jug, then sprint straight to the magic item shop, Rusty Mansion. Walking through the city, tension crackled while Portland Street lay eerily calm, Ari's eyes snagged on the grim-faced passersby. It probably boiled down to the area's swarm of magic shops. They burst into the Target store, where a lively shopkeeper greets them with a warm, beaming welcome. The sisters riffle through enchanted trinkets when the shopkeeper suddenly erupts, offering to buy their goods. The shopkeeper's eyes snap to their civilian clothes, proof they weren't alchemists, and he demanded, "Who sent you?" They brandished Russ's alchemist seal, and she agreed to buy their items. Alchemy item prices shot through the roof, but Rusty flat-out ordered prices to stay regular. She respects him, raving about his flawless potions. Her ironclad integrity floors the sisters. They walk off with a lavish payout. Rusty greenlit it as travel expenses. Bursting out of the shop, Erie lights up, proclaims they need a great meal, and they sprint straight for the nearest restaurant. They rewind to when their errands began. Collins barreled to find healers before Russ could, but every one of them bolted, terrified of the disease. Progress only ignited when Rusty arrived. The sisters poured patience into him, and soon everyone walked out of his tent improved. He blitzed through treatments, rescuing patients in record time and rooting out the disease's source. He shattered every doubt and proved he was extraordinary. Mid-bite, Erie froze, brow creasing as they wrestled with whether to ask Rusty to treat their eye condition. The sisters shot each other a barely there nod through their masks, minds crackling with daring plans. At the Alchemist Association's equipment vault, Realist snarled about his chores, blasting Rusty for abandoning his duties and dumping the work on him. He's convinced Rusty lacks any loyalty or appreciation for the association. Lately, the association's been slammed by relentless crises, forcing every master alchemist to throw down their tools and rush out to battle the chaos. Those special vaults guard volatile monster parts that demand surgical handling. A single careless move and they detonate. The vault was once under a single administrator's watch until brutal budget cuts yanked him out. Realist remembers Rusty stepping in to run the vault after he joined the basic research department. They dissolved it, abandoning dangerous materials to sit completely unguarded. Trouble erupts as scavenger slime detonates, spitting a geyser of thick, viscous fluid. Realist's jaw tightened. The vault was sealed to masters only because of Class 1 hazardous materials, so they couldn't dump the chores on any subordinate. Right then, a breathless underling barreled in to report. Chaos exploded when a statement declared the Arms Association's vice president was summoning a realist. Realist slammed an order at his subordinate Tack, unleash the other masters to lock down the vault while he heads off to meet the vice president. Left alone, Tack claws at a plan, desperate to marshal the masters. He slams the vault door shut, sealing the volatile magical elements inside. But it hits him, only a master's medallion can lock it. He charges to the association's entrance and plants himself on the doorstep, eyes fixed on the road, waiting for someone's return. The vault door yawns open as Vice President Gorn rips into the realists for keeping him waiting. Realists raise the alarm, supplies of basic transmutation materials are lagging behind. Gorn slammed his fist and demanded every scrap of equipment be delivered to the army for the coming war, promising harsh penalties for any delay. Realist blurts an apology, but the instant Gorn catches that rancid stench, fury surges through him. Realist spots the scavenger's mark and lunges to change it, but Gorn roars, demanding a delivery timeline. Realist's gaze snapped to Salazar, nerves fizzing. Salazar returned it with the same taut, unmistakable unease. They vow the order will be ready tomorrow. Gorn takes them at their word, but the realist's chest tightens and panic spikes because he knows the task is daunting. Later, the Arms Alchemy Department lab ignited as every prentice alchemist, day off or not, poured into the room. Realist roars that they must deliver the magic circuits to the Arms Association. The army is clamoring for fire-type weapons as the deadline snarls at their heels. Realist snapped, demanding why everything was stalled, and Salazar grimly revealed they're short on the high-grade distilled water needed to make the circuitrying solutions. Realist reels, stunned that a tiny problem has detonated into full-blown chaos. Tao storms in with a device to test the magic circuits. A circuit board poured from distilled water. They kick off a transmutation, and Tao leans in, fingers twitching as they inspect every inch. Every magical element was there, but it flat-out refused to wake, power too weak and its arcane flow wildly unstable. An alchemist's eyes snapped open. Russ's distilled water would supercharge the solutions. That maddening realist bans anyone from uttering Russ's name, bearing his blazing jealousy for all to see. Realism bellowed he'd distill water far superior to rust and blitz through the magic circuits to finish them. Irritation and competitive fire burning, he storms the challenge, relentless in his bid to showcase his skill. Hours later, Realism inspects the purity of his distilled water, ravenous for results. Zabuza claims it shatters expectations, all while burying the brutal truth: it doesn't meet the safety threshold. This oversight cranks up the chance the product's quality will be compromised. If issues erupt, the association's reputation could be ruined. The baiter grudgingly concedes the rust water was better, but he barrels on. He stonewalled any hint of Realism's response, only insisting the values meet the standards. Realism, satisfied at last, compels the alchemist to activate the system. Midnight bearing down, a swelling blast slams the lab from behind. Tao and Shock's eyes snapped wide. He'd left the vault door ajar, and the scavenger slime, gorged on magic elements, ballooned out of control. Panic rips through the alchemist as the slime balloons, ripping the lab apart and unleashing chaos. They explode into action, snatching every tool to strike back, even clutching a battered wooden box that cradles the magic circuit. The slime's titanic bulk and crushing strength make it a nightmare to face, so the alchemists fling every potion, bomb, and ward they have, desperately trying to stop the rampaging destruction. Night erupts into chaos as they launch into a frantic battle with the swelling slime, their earlier swagger snuffed out by the sudden crisis. Reality doesn't get a chance. The explosion roars and catapults him backward. The remaining alchemists tossed Realism aside, dove headfirst into taming the chaos, and still hauled their task across the finish line. Salazar barked at Skinny, deliver the magic circuits to the Arms Association at dawn. After Realism, he, now slime-drenched, bolts away. He lets her mount the transmuted beast for transport. Meanwhile, Colin's morning erupts before dawn. She spots her wild, tangled bed hair and shrugs it off. She rips into a hearty steak at breakfast, savoring every bite. Food's scarce at the border, but she eats just like her team and trains shoulder to shoulder with them. Colin launches into every challenge with a defiant grin, while nightmares claw through her sleep. She can't forget frustration gnawing and helplessness crushing her when her subordinates fell ill, and she brims with fierce gratitude for the people who saved them. Palin knew Rusty had bolted from the association the instant her call hit. He decided his old boss was incompetent. Now that he's fallen under her sway, she vows to set him free and shower him with rewards. One morning, she spots Rusty awake with the first light and snaps, "You heading out?" He declares he's heading out to scavenge materials. She pleads for him to stay safe and thanks him again for his aid. Det claws at her. She knows she'll owe him forever for rescuing her. She swears she'll give him anything he needs. Colin implores Rusty to lean on others, warning his lone wolf habits will devour his health. He can't keep going it alone, can he? Rust, awed by her rise into leadership, cracks a grin and beckons her to stand at his side. They lock arms and pledge to work shoulder to shoulder, forging partnerships stronger than ever. Rusty thunders back to camp atop his trusty hippo, the spoils of the hunt slung behind him, and the camp hums with promise. Colin locked down the funding and launched a full-scale assault on the town's crippling water shortage. The hunters ripped the monsters apart and gathered every needed part. Now only the jugs are left to grab. The mangaka's love for his character blazes through the pages, which is why everything's running smoothly. Though a massive plot twist could erupt any second, Rusty realizes he'll have to hunt down more monsters to meet the camp's swelling demands, and he's relieved the necessary scrolls were already prepped. Soon Rusty and Hippo thunder back into camp as the crowd erupts, cheering Rusty's triumphant return from the hunt. Mid the frenzy, he locks eyes on Leitna and barrels straight toward him. Rusty slapped a bundle of strange alchemical specimens he'd scavenged from the monster hunt onto the table, and Leitna's eyes snapped wide with instant hunger. The wide-eyed young aspiring alchemist practically begs to buy the materials at the monster butchering station. All eyes pinned on Rusty as the camp pressed forward, desperate for a look at the monster he dragged in. Rust hurled a flashy spell, yanking the scroll open to reveal the 4 male twins of 9 Hun. The crowd gaped as a lone hunter single-handedly felled those majestic beasts. Rusty flicks away their stunned awe with a sly grin and casually drops that he's got even more up his sleeve. The ground ripped open, spewing 1,000 rat, a hell horse, and a mole bear. Leighton's jaw snaps open in the hall. Rusty storms up to the inspector, hoists his hunted monsters like trophies with the rest of the camp, and the inspector's jaw drops at Rusty's deadly skill. He'd never laid eyes on 1,000 rat before, and mole bears and hell horses are brutal to hunt, proof that Rust's prowess is straight-up awe-inspiring. Rusty barrels toward the rose, not some sweetheart named Rose he's head over heels for, but an actual thorny rose in bloom. He clasps Rose's hand, gratitude blazing in his voice, and urges her to keep guarding his belongings. Rosa, his loyal companion, stormed back into camp hauling armfuls of clanking jugs. She'd pulled it off. Rusty flashes a grateful grin at Rosa and thanks her, then zeroes in on the jugs, running his hands over each one as he inspects them. He gaped when he discovered the money had been paid, then snapped, "Did you have any trouble transporting them?" Rosa shrugs it off, saying the capital's air crackles with tension and prices on some goods are climbing. Rusty presses asking about Colin. Knowing every report had landed in his hands, he assumed it all. Rusty snaps the small talk shut, zeroes in on business, barks at Roger to step back as he reweaves his purification spell through the water. This process drowns in more physics than a 9th grader's textbook. Rusty the alchemist grinds magic stones into dust. She dips them into pristine water, channels a pulse of arcane energy to seal that purity, and forces the water to obey the laws of physics. With that, he whipped up a magic potion that repaired the magic circuit, and Roy stood frozen, dumbstruck by his blistering efficiency. Rusty pivots from physics and plunges headfirst into chemistry's tangled principles, a maze of brutal complexity. Pressing on with the water purification, he tears free from gravity's grip and slams open his chemistry book. He hurls oddly shaped constructs, part glowing sigil, part chemical formula, into the water, then fuses the charged solution into the jug's magic circuit. Devour a lone magic crystal to charge the jug, or unlock ancient formulas that purify the water once and for all. Rust Everthorough tears into the physics and chemistry behind everything to purify the water, then unleashes those techniques on the remaining jugs. Robert barrels up to the group, grinning. Finally they can draw all the water they need. Rusty cuts him off, voice electric, declaring this is only the beginning of what applied chemistry and physics can unleash. Confusion flashes across Robert's face like everyone else's as Rusty steps up, clarifying the jugs are, for now, just for holding water. Then he beams and proclaims he'll build a magical device that ends the need to lug water to camp. Rust thundered it would rain from the sky, all thanks to his first law of applied chemistry, and Ro, puzzled yet intrigued by the audacious claim, asks if he can actually make it happen. She leans forward, eyes burning. She wants to watch the whole process, and Rusty flashes a grin and invites her to the lake. I roared, "Hippo, collect the water," and primes the enchanted contraption to yank water from the pot, an arcane procedure too tangled to unpack, like pure, volatile chemistry. The hippo surged from the lake, a tiny fish clamped in its jaws, a clear sign no giant threat or lurking monster hides below. Rusty rigs the device into place and Ro snaps, "Is this powered by that monster's magic stone?" Rusty confirms, snapping that he personally tested the water to prove no paralyzing cloud was lurking. A deadly residue spawned by a highly dangerous monster that laughs off every physical strike. Ro reels, heart hammering, scrambling to fathom the full, terrifying reach of Rust's abilities. Rusty sparks the gadget to life and Ro leans in, snapping, "What's it called?" Rusty smirks and christens it the Cloud Water Distribution Device, just as the machine starts spinning water into drifting clouds. He realizes the paralyzing cloud has formed into a hulking cloud monster, but at its heart pulses a glowing magic stone. Robert gapes as clouds sweep toward the jugs, pulled by the magic circle Rusty planted inside them, funneling every drop straight in. Clouds shrug off every physical shove, flowing like gas, formless, refusing any fixed volume, and Rusty rips the concept down to the bones. He fired off an E=mc2 quip. Monster attacks wreck the camp's pipes, so Russ cooks up a clever, remarkable plan to fuse magic with applied chemistry. Rust, Ro, and Hippo, with Rusty and Ro gripping the creature's back, thunder back into the camp. Rusty grins as the water pours into the jugs exactly on cue, and Erie's voice slices through the quiet. "Lady Colin needs you." Curiosity twisting into worry, Rusty sprints to meet Colin. They slam 2 communication parchments onto the table, one open, the other still sealed. She brimmed with astonishment. What would chew up days for any alchemist to rig the jug system and purify the water? Rusty snapped together in a single heartbeat. Rusty brushes off the compliment and hungrily pores over the brittle parchments that seem to come from Thomas Village. He hurled a question at Colin while she pressed the feudal lord for permission to trade in magic crystals. Noting the situation seemed favorable, Colin's expression snapped into a grave mask. He roared that the circumstances mattered far more than hollow promises. "Frankly, this shatters all expectations." Colin hooks Rusty's collar with a disarmingly gentle grip, eyes burning as he snaps, "What trick did you pull?" Rusty snapped that she was tearing his shirt, and Colin jumped back, wary of her monstrous strength. She could rattle Rusty like a rag doll if she grabbed his collar and shook him. Rusty froze for a heartbeat, then met Colin's gaze and swore there'd been no deceit involved. The Enterprise spins on traditional magic crystals, their power driving every move. Colin snaps to attention, voice sharp, "Are these the size H32 crystals?" Startled, she blurts out if Rusty can actually pull it off. Moments later she concedes, of course he can. Switching to business, Colin snaps at Rusty. "Do you realize digging into the capital's interests is like lighting a fuse under its power players?" Rusty snaps a nod to show he understands, then shoots Colin a quick, irritated wink. Colin snarls, does Rusty expect her to handle the fallout alone? Imagine them as a duo, one fumbling through a heap of rusty dishes while Colin frantically juggles multiple jobs. Rusty says he ran it past Harold, and every answer's been etched onto the parchment. Colin freezes, remembering Harold ignored the parchment. A storm is gathering over the capital, and she notes Erie and Ro sounded the same warning. She never imagined it would slam into her like this. Rusty and Colin are hatching a scheme, and Locke sits like an old friend, silent and sly, exchanging knowing looks across a dreary adult math class. Their minds snap into perfect sync. Spotting a golden opening, they whisper and gesture until they lock in the exact moment to strike. Colin barks at Rusty to dig into it, grinning as he promises to bury him under a mountain of work. Rusty seized her arm in a respectful grip, eyes steady, challenge accepted. He weaponizes the throwback vibe, turning echoes of earlier times into his advantage. A soft breeze teases the air, no bite, just a whisper. Today Rusty ignites his magic crystal venture in the neighboring dominion. He stands at the camp's entrance, flanked by Rowan and Ro. Soft, pleasant sunlight pours over him, melting the weight into something he relishes. Rowan's shout slices the air, "I see a group approaching." Heads snap to a single figure, a towering, utterly formidable presence daring anyone to move. Rusty freezes, he's handed the entire negotiation to others, and the specifics are a blackout to him. Contract and tedious deal aspects get handed off to an outside team. Fraying Rusty to zero in on transmuting kokoro fruits into glittering magic crystals for substantial profit, he savors ruthless flexibility. No floor, no ceiling to crystal output, so they pick whatever's most convenient. He vows he'll run every major production tweak by Colin before pulling the trigger. Rusty's jaw drops, they actually landed such favorable terms. He swept his gaze across the lonely terrain, realized this was a remote region with no proper roads, and knew mules were far more practical than wheeled transport here. He's convinced road upgrades have to be the top priority moving forward. Colin calls the shots, so Rusty doesn't bat an eye. His gaze races across the caravan, locking on wounded travelers. He pieces it together, they'd been ambushed. Moving on, he locks onto Azala's familiar face in the group and charges forward to greet him. Clues point to Rust once mentoring Zala, and Zala bounds up to Rusty with a warm grin, firing off a short, encouraging pep talk. Rusty's gaze snaps to the caravan's wounded. He barrels forward and vows to heal every one of them. No one's critically hurt. Rusty yanks a glowing potion from his pack and slams it into the hands of the wounded, ready to mend them. Rowan's voice slices through the bustle as he bellows Rust's name. Rusty's heart slammed into his ribs when he spotted Tala standing among the caravan. He remembers her as the Nike he rescued while racing to meet the calendar. Tala announced she'd been on her way to speak with Rusty, and when she learned the caravan was headed the same way, she leapt aboard. Zala bursts in, exclaiming Tala has saved the caravan from the monster time and again. Rusty flung his arms wide, grinning like a storm, and roared a warm welcome to Tala as they crossed into the borderland. After trading polite pleasantries, he slides a steaming cup of tea across the table, reading the stress coiled in her shoulders. He reads the hush. Tala's clutching a private secret from prying ears. Rusty beckons her into his tent for tea. Tala jumps on it, saying yes before you can blink. Meanwhile, Zala locks eyes with Rusty and asks him to ferry the Kedger fruits to the square, while Rowan scoffs and calls it a simple task. Rusty ushers Tala into the tent, sweeping her past chairs and tables carved from shimmering ice. Tala's jaw drops and Rusty grins, patting a frosted seat as he says, "Miss Tala, please sit." Tala cuts him off, shoves aside the formalities, reminds him he saved her life, and demands he call her Tala. Rusty grins, tells Tala she can just call him Rusty, and sparks flare. It's the shaky first heartbeat of something that could grow into a real connection. Maybe Tala will be the partner he finds. Rusty slides a steaming cup into Tala's hands and she inhales, eyes lighting up as she raves about the tea's rich, intoxicating scent. Silence crackles for a brief, awkward beat, then Tala cuts in, "I want to talk about the shaman with Rust." Rusty snaps, "You mean the one who sent a familiar after her?" Tala nods, voice cutting through the room. When Rusty slipped away, she hunted his trail straight to the capital. She was forced to swallow shame and tear down her own church. The moment she did, a curse latched onto her, unleashing the shame and a relentless tracker. After Rusty tore the curse away, Tala zeroed in on the shaman's secret hideout and found it without a single soul spotting him. He slipped through their grasp. Tala rifled the wreckage, unearthed several intriguing chips, and slammed one into Russ's palm. Wary that its safe label might hide a curse, Rusty snaps on gloves infused with the purification scroll's effect and leans in to inspect the chip. He snapped at Tala, "Did you show it to the Alchemist Association in the capital?" Tala says she didn't. Danger thrummed through her, so she kept her head down and melted into the crowd. She warned the church teetered on collapse, its walls pocked with holes of every size and a foul stench choking the air. Rust eats the place. The workers' faces are drained of life, staring hollow like the walking dead. Suspicion claws at him. Could a slime or some other creature be causing the problems? Someone's got to be tackling it head-on. Rusty Praise sees the tallest choice and sealed the chips into silence. He reveals the chip is a sorcerous circuit board that siphons magic elements and transmutes them into searing flame. The Alchemist Association branded every transmutation with a blazing hallmark. He revealed the hideout bristled with magic guns. Whispers and scattered clues began stitching a secret link between the association and the shaman. Rusty sounded the alarm, declaring the situation deeply concerning. Magic guns tear through living enemies with brutal, unstoppable efficiency. It crumpled the moment it faced humans. Change the magic element, and you trigger a brutal phenomenon called conversion loss. If those guns were forged just to hunt monsters, don't bother tinkering with their elements. It screams that the conversion was crafted as a weapon against humans, tearing off its mask to expose its true intent. Tola's breath stops as the nightmare implications of the discovery slam into him. Rusty snapped, "There's another problem, the gun's likely to misfire. It's threatening everyone nearby, clearly unintended, and it rips the mask off a glaring flaw." Rusty glares, rage and sorrow burning. This shoddy work came from his old workplace, and their careless management leaves him gutted. Tola beams, declaring she was right to come to Rusty, and slams him a fierce thank you for the crucial insights he handed her. Rusty tosses out Ptolemy, and Lady Colin leaps in, itching to introduce them. Tala beams, thanks them for the delightful tea, then steels herself and heads to join Rust. A mountain of urgent tasks pins him down, he can't make it to dinner with her. Zala and the others leave tomorrow, so Rusty must dive headfirst into transmuting Kegra fruits into magic crystals. He plunged into his work at the dinner table as Tala meets Lady Colin sat encircled by a tempting array of mouth-watering dishes. Tala's eyes snap to the women flanking Colin's on both sides, likely her loyal companions. Warm-hearted Lady Colin enfolds Tala in a warm greeting and ushers her into the Dominion. Rowan's breath hitched as he replayed the wild twists of fate that hurled Tala into the caravan. Now she stood as its fierce shield across every mile of the journey. Spotting Tala bone-deep hungry after her trek, Colin declared they'd prepared a small meal, a lavish spread that was anything but modest. Tala murmurs a quick thanks to her deity, then dives into the lavish, mouth-watering spread as each bite flings her into another realm. The meat detonates on her tongue, perfectly balanced herbs and molten juices fuse into an extraordinary culinary rush, and Tala wonders if this singular flesh came from a monster unlike anything she's ever tasted. Her gut screams it, the monster meat thrums with magic, so this rare delicacy must have come from a high-ranking creature. Tala steadied her breath and blurted, "Is this mouth-watering meat from a twin lion horn?" Colin's face lit into a proud, delighted smile. Tala had guessed perfectly on her very first try. Colin erupts in praise, lauding Thala's gourmet instincts as he declares the meat, twin lion horn, a steak from a full-grown female. Of the 9 horned creatures, hunters prize the adult females for meat pulsing with elemental power, potent magic coursing through their veins. Harry beamed, Rusty hunted down the beast, proof of his alchemical mastery. After relishing the steak, Tala slid a glass of ice-cold, crisp ale across the table that hit like the first succulent bite. One sip and she's ripped across the veil into another plane. She gushes that the ale is marvelous, stunned by its silk-smooth finish. Tala's jaw dropped, she'd stumbled onto a refined, ice-cold ale right in the middle of nowhere. She flashes a knowing smile, admitting she should have expected nothing less than this from Colin's domain. Colin beams, boasting that Rusty's one-of-a-kind magic item transforms their food and drink into exceptional delights, elevating every culinary creation they serve. As the conversation continues, a sharp jab of envy strikes Colin as he watches Tala and Rust click into an unmistakable bond. She demands to know what happened at Tala's earlier meeting with Rust. Tala's voice sears the air as she vows to hunt the shaman who harmed her comrades and claim ruthless vengeance. She slammed an alchemical clue onto the table and shoved it into Rusty's hands, daring the expert to unravel its secrets. Colin nods, eyes snap to Rust. He recognized Rust's alchemical mastery. The room hums with warmth, likely stoked by cold ale, and Tala rips open her past, swearing to carry her fallen allies' names like a banner. Beneath the bright moon, Tala's heart flares as she pours out her memories. 2 years ago, at the Turnip Guild's Erase Church, the air crackled. Sheila, a young girl, practically vibrated as she held up Lady Knight Tala, the doll dressed in a freshly sewn outfit. Sheila had fashioned it with her own hands and was burning to show Tala, the very person who'd gifted her the doll. Tola burst out praising Sheila's sewing, and Sheila's gear sprang to delighted life. Someone blurted, "Is Tala going into town?" Tala was already gearing up for a routine shopping trip. Sheila begged for a darling ribbon to deck out her doll, and just as they were about to leave, Holly's friend Portia burst in. She demanded Albert's liver, and vowed Al would be waiting when she came back. The secluded church buried in the forest beyond town survived on regular supply runs. Today Tala was the one racing to fetch them. Armed with a mile-long list, she vowed to kick things off early. Parish Chief Cilia Manning approached Tala. He caught wind of the shopping plans. They spotted the medicinal herbs running dangerously low, flashed a silly grin, and declared it prime time to restock. They slammed a warning at Talon, Stop overtraining, getting injured alone would be far too risky. To Celia radiated a mother's warmth, beloved for gentle kindness and razor-sharp perception. Nothing escaped her. Celia murmured a fierce blessing over Holly, sealing her safety, and Holly launched into the day's journey. Back in the present, Tala leans in and asks Colin about the goddess Eresli's 3 faces. Colin fires back love, wisdom, vengeance, and Tala beams. Tola chewed over her training in love and vengeance, the brutal lessons that stretched her studies, and when she returned from shopping, night had already fallen. While she was away, the shaman stormed the church, ripping chaos through its holy halls. Tala remembers snatching the ribbon and rare ingredients, panic exploding as she realized she was running late. She clung to the hope that Celia wouldn't be too distraught. As Tala crested the hill, a blinding light ripped across the sky and the church stood swallowed in roaring flames. She caught sight of Sheila's lifeless body amid the flames, tears carving her cheeks as grief tore her apart at the duel's agonizing death. Outside, light flooded the auditorium, the very hall where the blaze likely ignited. Flames hungrily licked through the shattered windows. Shock hit Tala like a punch, her hand shot to her sword and snapped rigid, leaving her frozen and unable to move. Guilt claws at her for freezing when it mattered. As the embers died with the sunrise, Tala's eyes slammed onto Silly's body and she recognized her at once. Burned beyond recognition, Silly's kind smile clung to their face, hauntingly alive even in death. The moment Tala reached to hold her, a shaman's curse ignited and Tala snapped, erupting into a roaring, feral fury. The shaman desecrated Celia's body, weaponizing her beloved status into a curse that doomed anyone who dared come close. Shame clung to Tala like a stain she could never scrub away. Bruises from the curse carved her face, each dark bloom screaming the dishonor she felt toward Celia. She insisted everyone else deserved more years than she ever would. I called and rushed to her side, my voice cracking as I begged forgiveness for dredging up those raw, painful memories. Tala, the Lady Knight, grips Rusty's gauntlet and admits she owes him for breaking the curse. She swears she'll press her sword into his hand once her vengeance is complete. Colin feels her resolve like wildfire in his chest, and as he ushers Talha into her dominion, he promises she will always be welcome. It compelled Tala to call her by her first name. Meanwhile, after hours reshaping matter with relentless transmutations, the master alchemist's throat went bone dry. Arya bursts in, arms overflowing with food and drink, imploring him to pause. Bull met, Rusty grins and devours a snack while standing. His loyal friend, Eerie, storms in lugging chairs, handing him a seat like a lifeline and wrapping him in instant comfort. Rusty tossed Eerie a sharp apology for the inconvenience as he sipped chunks of hail that soothed his throat. Eerie burst out grinning. Leitna brewed the ale for the welcome feast. Pride burned in Leitna as he perfected the drink through relentless experimentation since arriving. Rusty calls the ale exceptional. The strange aroma betrays it was brewed with ingredients from plant-type monsters. It hits him, Leitna isn't just managing the food storage, he's crafting jaw-dropping beverages. Eric recalls Leitna's joy erupting the moment a barley monster crashed into their dominion and he tore after it, hunting it down. Rusty zeroes in on the meal, a twin-horn steak daring him to take a bite. He'd tasted it before but never like this, now it roars in as a bold, thick-cut slab. He raves that the camp cooks consistently alchemize plain ingredients into vibrant feasts, their inventive prep and endless variety turning every meal into an electrifying surprise. Eerie raves that in their remote setting every meal turns into the day's electrifying highlight. She pivots the conversation, locks onto Rusty and fires the question, has he noticed the special abilities she and her sister possess? Rusty's suspicion exploded into certainty the moment they sprung their ambush on the outside camp. He suspects Rohan can pierce distance and solid matter with his gaze. Ari's NAC for gauging strength explodes to life, pointing straight to a connected power. Eerie smirks, conceding that most of his claims hit the mark. Rowan's eyes blaze across the horizon, piercing distance and cutting straight through the deepest shadows. Eric snatches brief, blinding flashes of the future. Rusty gaped, all igniting in his veins, magic eyes like theirs are a near-mythic rarity. The future sight thrums like a myth come alive. Eerie buries her gift beneath a casual shrug, pretending it means nothing. It snaps awake only when a clash is about to erupt, blasting you with a razor-sharp few seconds of foresight. Rusty snaps, "Do you know my fighting style?" His gaze locks on the cloth masking her face, and he pictures that sly, knowing smile tucked beneath it. Snaps don't answer. He leaned forward, testing whether she truly felt safe bearing so much about her powers. Harry explains her trust was forged by his actions and the help he gave, so she's pouring her heart out to him. She jabbed a finger at her face cloth and snapped, "That's exactly what I want to talk about." Rusty zeroed in. It's a magic item acting as a seal, his intuition razor sharp. If she needs the cloth repaired, she has to tackle the rust first. Erie snaps that these enchanted relics were forged to reign in their runaway powers, but their grip is slipping. Rusty pieces it together with a jolt, their powers are still surging. He tosses aside a simple mend and declares he'll forge 2 brand new arcane relics, warning the job will take time. Erie sees the alchemist's hands, gratitude burning in their chest, and swore to return the favor. He spurned the repayment, seeing every person as his kin. He praised her cooking, plunged back into his tasks, and vowed he'd check the sisters' clothes tomorrow. He bolted, every thought consumed by the burning need to return to the magic crystals. The next morning, Zala nearly burst with glee when the alchemist beamed that he'd transmuted every single crystal overnight. Ross's voice cracked as he fired the desperate question, "Can salt send us all back?" The jaw-dropping feat crushed every shred of doubt, and he sprang into action, barking orders to load the mules. He erupted into praise for the alchemist, awestruck by the man's jaw-dropping mastery. Ross sprinted back and seized the important figure who'd been traveling with them. Zala stormed back, hauling a pack of squirming mammals and a stern civil official from the Dalton Dominion who moved in to oversee the deal. Nemel staggered back, jaw-dropping, as the pile of Kager fruits erupted into glittering magic crystals in a single night. He planted himself across from Colin and ripped into the payment negotiations. Rusty caught wind that the village chief had probably primed his feudal lord to push the transaction through. He banked on the alchemist completing the task in a single night. Rusty realized Mammal's quill pen was a magical tool. It pulsed with enchanted wards that sealed key documents against tampering and forgery. The stamp the mammals used blazed alive with magic. Rusty stared at the parchment. The sum scrawled there blew past twice last year's entire budget for the basic research department. The mammals thrust the payment check into Colin's hands, and he seized it. The official demanded the rust portion be paid, exactly as the agreement required. Colin stood and thundered the founding of the Dominion's Alchemy Research Department, vowing to run it personally, then shocked the room by appointing Rusty as its head, leaving the alchemist dumbfounded. He accepted it, but he always shouldered the fallout of his decisions. Colin laid it down. For now, the new department will be funded from magic crystal sales profits, after Russell takes his cut. The master alchemist grinned, knowing launching a new department would be a monstrous task, and he pictured the paperwork mammals drowning in forms, almost pitying the official. Colin commanded the mammals to haul the crystals to their destined homes, his dominion included, exactly as they'd agreed. Mammals flashed a triumphant grin and vowed to run the logistics without a hitch. They burned to unleash the strategic resources and wield them with surgical precision. Rusty realized colonics almost never plotted, so he shrugged and tossed the messy details to the 2 officials. As he headed for the door, he barreled over to Rusty, clapped him on the shoulder and shouted, "Congrats on the new role." She burned to watch him in action as he set off to hunt the shaman with the information he'd provided. The Lady Knight flashed a fierce salute, wished him success with a steady voice, then turned on her heel and strode away. Rusty watched her disappear, silently willing her to seize victory in her quest for vengeance, then whirled back to Colin. Lady Rose announced nothing would really change. He'd still be tackling campus shoes with alchemy, transmuting magic crystals, and carrying out basic research. He had to make research the beating heart of his role, and Colin insisted he could wield the budget however he wanted. He had the green light, within reason, if he tallied and covered every last expense. She pictured the department transforming into its own independent entity, its ranks swelling with new staff. They asked him to propose a name for it. Rusty's eyes narrowed as he dove into thought, hunting the perfect name for the new department. He zeroed in on something unique from the Alchemist Association. His mind snaps to names stamped by the Admiral Dominion and born from his own alchemical work. Realizing he can't settle on one right now, he slams the choice aside and dives back into his tasks. Outside his tent, the 2 sisters' voices exploded into the night, shouting that they'd arrived. The sister bursts inside, and Rusty snaps that he came to check on them because of Ari's earlier comments. He remembers noticing Rowan's eyes snapping around his tent again and again during her last visit, almost certainly probing the rose with her magic eye. A thrill zips through him at that uncanny ability. Rusty snaps and the rose lock into 2 chairs for them. He barrels toward the sisters, eyes sharp, charting the magical currents in their eyes and probing how the enchanted cloth clamps down on their powers. First, he has them wrap a sealing scroll around their eyes, instantly snuffing out their magic sight. He's gearing up to run a lightning-fast check on their enchanted clothes. Erie's voice quivers as she asks who should go first, and Rusty smirks. He saw this coming. The risk of removing the magic item ignites raw anxiety, and it's written all over their faces. The alchemist throws out a plan: start with a row hit. As Aries' magic-eye ramps up, her body bucks and buckles under the crushing strain. He thrusts the scroll into Erie's hands and shows her how to coil it around Rohit's head, veiling her eyes. After securing it, Rusty slams the scroll shut and seals it, and Rohit's vision collapses into absolute darkness. Convinced the scroll works, he tells Erie to yank the magic item off her sister. Erie falls into line and Rusty snaps at the rose to grab the magic element tester, a device that pulses faint arcane traces to read and judge enchanted items. The leaf crashed over him. The magic stone was intact. Slams the cloth onto the table, leaning in to pry into its arcane reservoir. Everything funneled into a single, blazing point right in the center of Roquet's brow. When she slips it on, Rusty sends a pendulum swinging to read the roaring currents of magic. He deciphers the magic cloth's design as shockingly simple and zeroes in on a buffer and an amplifier woven right into the fabric. They shrug them off as mostly unnecessary. He spots gaping potential for serious upgrades. The alchemist who forged it left unmistakably amateur fingerprints. Rusty could fuse several of his own magic circuits and, in a heartbeat, forge a far superior item. The question claws at him: was the original alchemist close to the sisters, and how much of that truth can he risk revealing? He locks onto the sisters, relief surging through him the moment Rowan finally relaxes. He thrusts the magic item into Erie's hands and snaps, put it back on Rohit's face. Rusty surged forward, prying the seal open as he seized Rohit's hand. They slammed the sharing protocol online, flooding the item with shared energy and catapulting its performance sky-high. When he finished, he thrust the scroll into Rohan's hands and charged him to safeguard it until the moment it was needed. Doubt gnawed at him. Had he messed up? Rohit's steady reassurance declared the experiment a success and chased his worries away. The alchemist finishes scrutinizing the sisters, mind blazing with plans to forge 2 magic items that would crush their current gear, but he can't decide whether to part with them. He freezes as the truth hits him: bringing in new items will shove the old ones aside. Special abilities are rare, still cloaked in mystery. Fear claws at him that the psychological strain could unravel their control. If their only goal is to bolster their powers, those old relics could be the trump card. Torn by the impossible choice, he schemes to build a device that measures and compares who truly commands the magic. Rusty slammed into a dead end, his research stalled, strangled by soul-sapping busywork and the shoestring budget of his former workplace. Funding in hand, Rusty plots a daring new approach. He's chasing a fresh strategy, not just cranking up performance. He's plotting gadgets that can snap fully to life or shut down cold. It surged into automatic control in short, sharp bursts. He wonders, pulse racing, flip the formula on its head and drop it into a different problem. Could it work? This could finally unleash the exact outcome we've been chasing. Later, he strides up to Rohit, who's been waiting, and declares he's forged 2 brand new enchanted items for her. He thrusts 2 pairs of glasses into view. At first, the sisters fumble and exchange panicked glances, utterly clueless how to use them. He snaps the glasses into place to show how they sit, then asks them to remove their clothes. The sisters gasp as each other's faces snap into focus, the glasses flooding them with a rush of vibrant life. Rusty whooped, gushing that the glasses made them both look unstoppable. At first, Erie freezes, cheeks flushing as she awkwardly adjusts to the new item. Rusty barrels on, rattling off how they function and kicking off with the Rodex glasses, which already seem to be adjusting perfectly. He leans in with a grin and says, slide them up her nose and they'll snap into power sealing mode. Rowing hammers the glasses' performance until she finally settles, fully content. Rusty hauls them up to the armored summit. Sound have been surging upstream in droves since Apollo obliterated the pond's boss. Rowan fells the salmon with one lightning-quick surgical blow. Skill that leaves even Colin utterly outclassed. Her ability to rest hinges on whether she has any issues with the item. Rowan beams, utterly ecstatic about her glasses. She masters her magic eyes at last, and the world explodes into vibrant, living color. Rowan's grin widens as the new glasses snap from transparency mode to long-distance sight in one flawless instant. He calls out one glaring drawback. Voice activation can be handy, but she always reaches for the screen she trusts touch control. She recommends switching to her left hand for the controls, it's simply far more practical. She wields her spear with her right, steady and exact. Rusty nods, snatches the glasses and fine-tunes them on the spot. He rips into the magic circuit, rewriting its pathways and yanking every control to the left. He hands the upgraded glasses back to Rohit. Rohit snaps them on, joy lighting his face, then launches into a jubilant dance spiraling around the pond. Ari and Rusty grin at her, then an armored salmon slams onto her spear, pinning itself perfectly. Her elder sister's magic eye pinned the salmon's leap before it even began, and she cut it down with a single deadly strike. Rusty's pulse rockets. Did her magic keep crackling after the fight, or did she just glimpse a future where he blurts his thoughts out by accident? Harry's grin sharpened as he shot back, "You're not entirely off the mark." Rage ignites in Realism as the association's president barks a single command: fetch Russell. Every department is under siege, shoddy basic materials are sabotaging their work. Glitches ignite transmutation failures and stall the process, and buyers are slamming the table, demanding compensation for missed deadlines and shoddy materials. The president throws his old claim at Realism that Russell's departure wouldn't matter, and everyone's shouting, how will he explain this crisis? The president rips into Realism, blasting it for sullying the association's reputation and leaving Russell's role glaringly empty. Their buildings gaped with blast-torn holes, and a rotten stench hung heavy in the air. Even with everything falling apart, Realism roars no and refuses to bring Rusty back. Convinced their sales shattered records without him, they now stake everything on the fresh magic crystal shipment. The president cuts in, slams down an order that Realism must cover Russell's absence, and snarls that if Realism fails, he'll force him to fetch Russell in person. Realism clenched its jaw and pointed at Rusty, declaring he alone had unleashed the chaos. He storms back into the army's alchemy department, mood like a thundercloud. Every alchemist in the room flinches at the chill he radiates. Salazar storms in next, bearing grim news time to tear into the review. My gut screams that most of the new-style magic crystals we recently shipped have already been returned. Realism's fury explodes as he rips into the return shipment. He snapped, demanding every detail of the payment and ordering Todd to get on the phone with the wholesalers. Todd bursts in, voice blazing, "What do I do with the return crystals? They fuel livelihoods and keep families afloat." Realism snaps at Todd to race to the storage unit, strip it bare to make room, stow the return shipment there, and then track down where it was supposed to go. The alchemists freeze, torn over the dusty, battered relics, yet ruthless necessity forces their hands, they must cast them aside. They storm into the storage rooms and rip through boxes, sorting and stacking with fierce speed to carve out space. Skinny's eyes lock on the battered wooden boxes. He assumes they're obsolete equipment from the former basic research department and dismisses them as unimportant. She yanks open a box, spots a colorless, transparent liquid and scoffs, waving it off as one of those worthless potions. Tortora plots to hurl everything into the river without even checking with Realism, gambling they won't anger their superior any further. The alchemists explode into action, and Skinny hustles a borrowed transmuted beast to drag the wooden boxes down to the river. Packed with concentrated magic element solutions, these boxes fueled the experiments Rusty ran during his early research. Great news, those magic elements can't hurt people, so dumping them into the river won't unleash immediate damage. Nothing looks harmed, so tall and the other's deeds will slip past everyone's notice until it's already too late. The damage can lie buried at first and the future fallout is anyone's guess. Russell's actions plunged the bloated, corrupt master into white-hot rage. He was a dead ringer for that irrational math teacher you remember from school. Chaos rips through the Alchemist Association's communications room as Salazar clutches a paper, his brow knotted in confusion while he reads. Master Realism crashes through the door, jolting the hapless employee into silence before he can answer, strides up and snatches the paper from his hands. Deep furrows carved his brow, bewilderment roaring behind his eyes, then they spot ancient magic crystals strewn everywhere, numerous and glittering with power. Realism bellows a warning, disbelief clawing at its throat. Imports have been slammed shut by those old-style magic crystals. Realism suspects an association number is smuggling them in, but that claim strains belief. Betray the association and you're tossed out instantly. An unlicensed alchemist didn't have the chops to pull off this scheme. Realism snapped the clues together and remembered Russell's sudden exit from the association. He's got Rusty in his sights, but clients keep sending back the new-style magic crystals. At this rate, the association risks being buried under unsellable stock. Realism fires a barrage of sharp questions about the sales, and the other alchemist lets slip they've only barely recovered. Doom looms over the association, and Realism explodes in fury. Realism is convinced Rusty masterminded everything. If that's true, he'd have to choke on his pride and kneel, begging Rusty to come back, but his ego is too colossal to ever admit it. A woman bursts from the doorway, yelling to Realism that the chief is summoning him. The chief's fury crackles through the hall. Harsh reality clings to Rusty, its curse gnawing at him for a few more breaths, but they plunged into the forest with a pack of suspicious-looking strangers, fighting their way through the thick, tangled terrain. Sunlight slashes across Realism's bald head, making it gleam like a pale, forlorn moon as tears pool in his eyes and frustration crackles through him. He's powerless to change things now, or is he? The chief barked for Realism and ordered him to haul Rusty back to the association, a mission the stubborn old man despises, but he has no choice. He must obey the chief's direct orders. He emptied his own pockets to hire a ragtag crew of rough-looking delinquents for a trek into the forest to retrieve Russell. His judgment looked shaky. The hired men were as weak and incompetent as he was, but at least he wouldn't be going in alone. The lone delinquent scoffs at the route, but Realism keeps slipping away. They bluster that they're on the right path, then it's exposed. Instead of retrieving Russell, those fools are plotting to murder the unsuspecting alchemist, and that misstep will be their undoing. Russell won't go down. He storms back into the fight, and the group hauls magic circuits from the association, devices built to bend the elements. They're turning those things into weapons aimed straight at Russell. Cold reality demands Rusty be reduced to ash, and his cruel wishes are bound to crash and burn. He hatched a vicious plot, barking orders for his men to bait Rusty into a snare that would summon ravenous monsters to tear him apart. A vile plan indeed. Realism's twisted mind fans the group's greed as they assume Russell, likely the source of the magic crystals, must be filthy rich, and they salivate, plotting how they'll carve up the spoils if their scheme succeeds. Arrogance crackles around the group. They're certain they can take Russell down. Realism snarls at Rusty, calls him a fool for diving into the beast-infested backcountry, and boasts that if he dies it will be on him alone. His logic is lab-forged, meticulously worked out like a complex chemistry experiment. Realism spits in the face of the chief, who prefers spotless operations. He roared to his group, many of the local monsters are hypersensitive to sound. They were planning to unleash this on the 6,000s of creatures on Russell. Out of nowhere, Realism's thunderous shout draws a sound-sensitive beast that barrels in from behind, and the group tears the tiny, warm-bodied creature apart in seconds. Thousands of monsters thunder toward us, a dire threat. The Realism orders force us onto the magic circuits. Tinkering with elements has already bled our magic resources dry. He urged Annette to hit their targets, but the stubborn hired men sneered and tore through their magic crystals in no time. They swarm him, desperate for spare crystals and a weapon, but his hands are empty. Cowardly men bolt, tossing Realism aside to confront the threat alone. The betrayal sears. Labeled just an association number, he proves solid skill as he charges the monster solo, unleashing spells and smashing the worm-like creatures. Reality refuses to bend as the relentless swarms close in. Bizarrely, his transmuted pike, his sole attack, is hamstrung by Harbor's parasitic high-fat lodged in his body, revealing a critical flaw in his alchemy. His crippling inefficiency haunts him, making him recoil from every clash. Cornered and out of options, he charges into a brutal fight to survive. Real relentlessly tears through the monsters, obliterating them one by one. He hurls a cloud of spores that siphon the life from ferocious beasts, sprouting living mushrooms from their remains that swiftly rip their flesh apart and finish them. Standing amid a vast pile of dead monsters he'd slain, Realism stares down the brutal truth. Even more are barreling toward him. He fights on through a relentless onslaught, forced to choose fight or die as he picks his way over monster corpses. Then a creature slips in behind him and sinks its fangs into him. Pain so searing it drags up memories of his ancestors battling that villain. Exhaustion carves deep lines of rage across his face. Badly wounded and bloodied, he summons the last of his strength and slays the worm that attacked him. He drops to one knee, the other leg braced, fingers probing the wound. He wonders if a potion could heal it. Around him the landscape lies ghastly, littered with monsters felled by his alchemy and sprouting mushrooms. After recovering from the skirmish, Realism rockets upright and surges toward Russell, bellowing that Rusty is to blame for all the suffering he's endured. Vengeance blazing, he plots to bait Rusty back into the association and ambush him at the peak of his triumph to annihilate him. The story's currents sweep his villainous scheme straight into ruin. Burdened by his massive frame, Realism hauls himself across the vast wastes, every step a grind, but his resolve locked on finding Rusty. Rusty, meanwhile, savors a rare calm with loyal Hippo as he executes a crucial alchemist task. They ripped arcane energy from soil meant for cultivation, starving the fields of the magic that should have nourished the crops. When magic piles into the earth, fields refuse to grow and seeds can warp into monsters. Alchemists tear those elements from the soil and fling them into the atmosphere. Rusty clawed out hand-sized hollows in the cracked, powdery earth. The earth fights every strike, but Rusty grinds it down and finishes the dig while Hippo, his trusty steed, leans in with curiosity bright in his eyes. Rusty asks to swap digging turns. Hippo leaps at the chance. Rusty steps aside and watches Hippo tear into the earth. Impressed, he points to Mark's spots. The holes are done in a heartbeat. Rusty lunges into the next step, wielding transmuted bolts to wrench the magic elements free. Hippo tried to help, but Russell, seeing the tangled mess this would be for his four-legged friend, grabbed the reins and handled it himself. He seals every leak, belts the incantation, and rips the elemental magic into a redirected torrent. The bolts ignite, yanking raw magic from the soil, and Rusty reins in every pull. Draw too much and the surge will snap back and wound him. Glancing at the charm on his left wrist, his mind snaps back to the second he slipped it onto that arm. Ari pressed a hometown charm into Rusty's hand, a blazing thank you for the enchanted trinket he'd given her. Rusty leans in and asks about the charm, and the Ari blushes. She reveals the charm can be cut. Rusty's face lights up when she says it's from Rohan, but confusion gnaws at him over why being cut makes it special. Back in the present, Rusty sinks against the Hippo to rest. The incantations will drag on, so he reaches for a precursor's paper to pore over while he waits. He slams a study onto the table, pitting the soil's magic element levels against the weak grown in it. Before he rose to lead the Alchemist Association, he painstakingly transcribed every paper from the basic research department onto a single scroll. He knew Realism and the others would toss them aside. Rusty's life spills into the precursor's paper, its findings swallowing him whole. The paper claims leaving trace magical elements in the soil makes food taste better to humans. The theory says the brain is duped by swallowed magic elements into savoring amplified flavor, even though the taste itself never changes. Russell dives headfirst into how magical elements twist the human body, and this paper drops sharp, essential insights. The paper bursts with fascinating points that tie into his work just as Rusty ponders. Hippo trumpets an alert, and he realizes the task is nearly done. Rusty sprang up, checked the concentration, and declared it perfect. He showered Hippo with praise for watching the soil and alerting him immediately. Before he can take another step, Harry bolts in from afar, shouting that someone's come to see him, and it could be trouble. Rusty narrows his eyes, gut screaming trouble. He snaps at Eerie. Did they give a name? Eerie, sweating, chokes out Realism, and in a heartbeat it feels like Realism's downfall is about to erupt. Rusty gapes. Why would Realism show up for him? Academy ghosts coil in his gut, unease tightening its grip, yet he steels himself, heads back to the community to confront the surprise visitor, and on the way turns to Eerie and orders her to spill every detail. Rusty Nance Hippo thrusts a hand toward Eerie. She freezes, shy and unsure, then finally grabs his hand and clambers aboard as Rusty shouts, "Hold on tight!" He's about to gun it to get them back fast. Eerie whoops as the ride rips and strangely cradles her, tucked behind the fierce, promising Russell, and across the jagged wasteland she wonders if Hippo is easing its pace to keep them safe. Or maybe Rusty Equit Tipo, decked with costly fox shock springs on each of its four legs, drops that Realism used to be a colleague at the Alchemist Association, notorious for causing trouble, and he pictures Realism's face chalk-white and unreadable. He pieces the clues together, suspecting Realism's visit is the spark behind the magic crystal's malfunctions. A cold spike of realization stabs him and he steels himself for the looming confrontation. Rusty, spotting Ares's discomfort, leans in and gently asks if something's wrong, and at first the kind woman admits she can't see the future clearly. She senses a twisted battle coiling on the horizon, her instincts screaming this will erupt into a full-scale war. Eerie gasps that her vision keeps flickering in and out, each blackout tightening her dread, and Rusty snaps a sharp question about the monocle he gave her, desperate to know if it actually works. Eerie erupts, shouting that the magic item Rusty crafted for her works flawlessly. The remarkable monocle now lets her spot the first omens of the coming battle and steels her for the challenges ahead. Rusty's jaw dropped as Eerie answered before he'd even finished the question. The monocle was working perfectly. He snaps, "So you're saying he'll clash with realism down the line?" Harry confirms, it seems almost certain. She warns it's not just a fight, her gut screams that something deeper is brewing, and she can't explain it because it's unlike anything she's ever felt. Cheeks burning, Ari recoils and edges out of the conversation. Rusty waves off her retreat like it's nothing. Hit her with a thunderous "thank you for those insights." Hippo plows through the jagged terrain as anxiety coils around Harry, her mind heavy with the looming turning point that hinges on Russell's choices. She feels the turning point, the moment where victory and ruin carry equal weight barreling toward her. In her mind, Eerie senses fate unspooling as two men square off in a barren wasteland scarred by a shaman's presence. Rusty spots Ares' distress, whips her gaze back, and her eyes flare with magic, every detail snapping into razor-clear focus. The monocle surges to full power, locked to her enchanted gaze. Her vision of the future shatters Russell's expectations, leaving him frozen and awestruck by the raw might of her power. Haunted by troubling thoughts, Aerie teeters and almost loses her footing. Rusty lunges, locks her steady with a fierce grip and bellows, "Hold on." Relief surges through Eerie as she grabs his hand, thanks him breathlessly and swears she's fine, while Rusty spots that her future sight has stopped. It hits you, her magical eye is draining her far more than you ever realized. Rusty swears he'll shield everyone from whatever fate hurls at them, and he calls Eerie family. They cloak their bond in mystery, clearly not siblings, maybe something far deeper, and to keep things family-friendly, we'll leave the rest to your imagination. Rusty flashed a resolute smile, shouted for Eerie to hold tight and braced to rocket forward. Hippo, his trusty steed, thunders forward on four powerful legs and bursts into the camp in a heartbeat. Eerie guides Rusty to Realism's location, her sense razor-sharp. She mourns, swallowed by an evil aura radiating from Realism. Tear into those rusted wonders and see if they're tied to her transparency power. As they close in, his gaze snaps to Lady Colin, only a few paces away. He shoots Colin a quick, polite apology for their delay, then charges forward to face the hostile, almost beastly Realism. Facing Realism, the master alchemist rips Colin out of his element. He's a fist-first fighter, not a wielder of transmutation. Rusty sees that facing Realism alone would crush her. With fire in his eyes, he rallies everyone, seizes command, and charges forward to meet it. He pinches his nose with theatrical flair and quips that something reeks, a pointed jab at Realism's sudden intrusion. The master alchemist shoots back with matching scorn, teeth clenched as he steels himself for the showdown. Fueled by his schemes, Realism proclaims the Alchemist Association will restart its basic research department. The president just threw Rusty a lifeline, a shot at coming back. Realism thrust out his hand, feigning friendship as he asks Rusty if he's pleased at the chance to rejoin the Alchemist Association, his voice dripping with insincerity. Rusty sniffs out the hidden hostility, then flashes a clipped nod to acknowledge the offer. He insists he walked away from the association by choice, a conscious, eyes-wide-open decision. The basic research department's closure pushed him out, and now he's found fresh purpose and new opportunity beyond the association. Rusty levels a cold stare at Realism and snaps, "Is that all you wanted? Say the word and I'm out," and Realism's phony composure cracks under the pressure. He rips out a raw, animalistic howl, no tears, only a primal outburst of rage and frustration, and that eerie cry slams into Russell, Colin, Eerie, and Rohan, snapping them into defensive stances. I brace for Realism's next strike. As his schemes crumble, his whole demeanor snaps into something cold and ruthless, and he declares there's no choice left and he unleashes his alchemy, eyes blazing with menace, and snarls he'll annihilate everyone in the room. Tension crackled as Rusty and his allies braced for the looming battle, knowing they had to unite against this formidable foe, while Rusty pleaded cold logic, reminding everyone that duels to the death between alchemists are illegal. and could strip him of his qualifications. Unfazed, Realism's smirk pulsed with razor confidence as he boasted he'd crush Russell, the story's hero, and shut the whole tale down right then, a brazen claim. Rusty spots Realism spewing spores from his mouth and bellows for everyone to retreat. A warning screams, the slime mold transmuted beasts exhale a poisonous mist, a single inhale could kill. Soon the spores burst into writhing limbs, masquerading as harmless but almost certainly laced with Realism's poisonous elements. Rusty tightens his grip, he's going to take them all down in one clean, explosive sweep. He yanks a small white wand into view, Erie's eyes snap open. She recognizes it from his magic crystal production. Rusty rips free a full-power tornado and slams it straight into the Realism spores. Someone should tell Realism he's just a side character. He's not the villain. His clash with Rusty erupts into chaos, and Russell's tornado obliterates Realism's dangerous mushrooms. Doubt not at Rusty, he painstakingly carved the transmuted beasts into tiny pieces to forestall any surprises. Colin, Erie, and Rohan traded confident grins, their trust in Russell's alchemy rock solid. Ever cautious, Rusty hauls the mushrooms miles from camp to shield civilians, a bold move that slams into Realism, a corrupt alchemist working for a rotten system. Their carelessness screams the harsh truths of countless worlds. Realism watches, face blank, as Russell's tornado shreds his mushrooms to dust, the pulverized fungi spiraling up the tornado's pole into a grotesque, smoothie-like sludge. The revolting sight pins Realism's gaze, sorrow flooding his eyes as his cherished creations melt into a putrid sludge. The tornado devours him, tattooing him and the disgusting remains of his mushrooms with its warped code. Russell's friend roared from the sidelines as the action exploded into a blur, racing too fast for them to fully track. Rage and humiliation sear through Realism as he rockets upright, clawing at the slimy mushroom sludge clinging to him. A pained shriek rips from him as he lunges for his mushrooms, but the slick mess slides through his fingers, and with it, his chances of defeating Russell. Tormented, he roars for answers. How could Rusty obliterate his precious fungi? Someone has to yank him back. It's a battle, and Rusty feels nothing for those ghastly mushrooms, unlike Realism. Rusty and his friend trade stunned looks at Realism's ridiculous outburst. Realism snaps back, unfurls a manifest scroll, and summons a towering mushroom that spews a thick, choking haze into the surroundings. Rusty sneers, calling it a smoke screen and taunting Realism for fleeing the fight he provoked, while the heavier-than-air gas plummets low, pooling and birthing a lethal new threat. Called it, the coward bolts, and Rusty and his allies reel, jaws dropped as they wonder why Realism even showed up. Colin screams to chase him, but Rusty drags them to a stop, warning that any released gas could be toxic, despite his erratic actions. Realism's status as a master alchemist still looms as a deadly threat. Rusty channels alchemy in a blink, scouring the air and corralling the poison. The air ripples and warps, proof he's ripping the gases apart. He'd already warned, this alchemy devours every ounce of focus. He sculpts each gas into its own gleaming bubble, one cradling pure oxygen. Using a razor sunbeam, Rusty ignites the oxygen bubble and blasts it tumbling downward. Just enough to ignite a roaring wave of searing heat. He edges in, breath held, then lunges, snatching a jar to cage the swirling purple, potentially poisonous smoke, and slams the lid so it can't hurt anyone. Rusty spins to his friends and vows he's going after Realism, but Rogette's hawk-like eyes cut across the distance and zero in on something deeply troubling. She screams at Rusty to duck behind them as everyone locks onto the horizon, where a frenzied swarm of waned, armored salmon barrels straight for them. Freshly evolved creatures erupted into a thunderous stampede, and Rusty snapped, why this strange timing? Torn, he teetered between charging them head-on and embracing cold, hard Realism. Colin seizes command, slams Rowan and Erie to the front to stall the creatures while she sizes up their fighting strength, then stakes out a vantage to oversee the clash and shepherd noncombatants to safety. After barking orders to put survival above all else, Colin spins to Russell, calls him Master Rust, and vows their full support, whether he chases Realism or stays to fight. Rusty stalls, weighing his options as instinct claws him toward Realism. Doubt claws at him, was this the fateful moment Rowan foresaw? He stands on a razor's edge, chase Realism or stay and help Colin and the others fend off the monstrous creatures, sweat beading on Russell's face as he wrestles the decision's crushing weight, knowing Colin and the others are locked in a desperate fight against flying foes. And these armor-plated sky beasts ruled the clouds, their scales harder than steel. Without proper gear or alchemy, they'd be overrun, and the battle would flip into a desperate, full-on defensive stand. It bristled with the threat of heavy casualties. Let realism breaks loose and disaster ignites. Alchemists' duels are outlawed because their unleashed power can ravage the environment. These clashes can rip through the streets, dragging duelists and nearby civilians into deadly chaos, so duels to the death are tightly regulated. Rusty knows it. If realism runs rampant, the fallout will dwarf the current threat. If it retreats only to roar back stronger, the danger will explode. Colin, sensing the danger closing in, steels himself and vows to shield the camp and every civilian above all else. He places the decision squarely in Russell's hands. It's his call. He radiates unshakable confidence, ready to make the right call when everything hangs in the balance. After a long, hard reflection, Rusty steels himself and declares he'll stay at the camp. He won't chase realism. Looking at Colin, he sees the crushing weight of the responsibility she carries. People kept dying while he pursued ruthless realism, and Colin would be left to shoulder the crushing grief and regret alone as the camp's leader. He knew she'd swallow the emotional toll whole and wear a brave smile. Rusty steels himself, deciding his duty is here to keep those who rely on him safe. Realism sneers with a smug smile and says they'll deal with him later if he returns. Colin exhales as relief rushes through her when she learns Rusty will stay and fight alongside them. His choice steals her resolve. Determination roars through her as they plant their feet and face the looming threat side by side. Rusty braced himself to face the sky salmon, feet planted like an anchor as his eyes hunted across the heavens. Eerie roared that Rusty must pursue realism, but Colin sliced through her words, silencing her mid-sentence. She slammed down her authority, demanding they obey her commands. Eerie swallows, nods, and hisses. They'll make their move the instant Colin slips from view. Rusty forces out a hushed apology to Eerie, every syllable snagging in his throat as he wrestles for the right words. A cold doubt gnaws at him about the future Eerie foresaw. Scanning his past, he watches passivity creep in like rust rooting itself before he even noticed. Now a shot to shake the future has landed in his hands, Colin's trust and the camp's hope burning in his veins. Rusty swore he'd guard what they've given him to his last breath. He snaps his head up as the sky salmon split into two swarms, one rocketing for the capital while the other dives straight down toward the camp. Rusty stares, torn between hope and dread. News from the capital could tip the fate of them all, and that gnawing uncertainty presses on him as he steels himself for battle. Rusty barked at Eerie and Rohit, demanding where the non-combatants were, and they shot back that they were being escorted to the food storeroom. Armed with it, Rusty rockets to camp, snatches every chemical supply, and with no time to spare slams down a spell to unleash a furious rapid transmutation with his finest materials. Normally, he wrings every last ounce from resources, stretching them to the absolute limit. Those items are priceless, he feels it in his bones, there's no replacing them. Saving the camp's people is worth every scrap, a tiny price to pay, and Rusty hustles through the chaos, sweating to keep everything clear. Every rapid shift rips away his strength, and the alchemy needs needle-fine focus, threading a needle while he juggles multiple chemical processes, and trying to keep them all in balance is crushing him. For a heartbeat, blackness clawed at his mind, yanking him toward unconsciousness. Rusty plants his feet, claws past bone-deep exhaustion, and forces the final syllable of the spell free. He slams open the scrolls, charges them to face the skybound foes, and births 9 schools. Everything in place, he strode out, clinging to the desperate hope that everyone still stood firm against the looming danger. Rusty bolts out of camp, looks up, and watches Colin tear through the sky, slashing flying salmon left and right, and she looms in slick black full plate, and awe hits him, not just for her devastating power but for the lethal elegance she moves with. The chaotic pulse of youth sharpens in his mind, and he finally understands why Colin has earned the title of war here. She packs jaw-dropping strength that outclasses most people, all in a lean, unassuming frame. Her heavy full-plate armor and a hulking greatsword obliterate any weakness. She dominates the battlefield, cutting down foes with deadly skill and iron will. Colin spots Rust, sprints to him and snaps, "All set." Rusty gives a single, steady nod. He lets his gaze sweep the battlefield, declares Colin could have handled it all alone, and Colin just shakes her head. She jabbed at the monster eggs scattered around, snarling she couldn't have tackled them alone and demanding Rusty deal with them. Rusty roared, "We must wipe out every monster at once." He yanks every prepared scroll free and launches into a roaring spell, unleashing them all at once in a blinding surge. Rusty could have vaporized the monsters with polished scrolls, but those would shred the camp to pieces, so he reaches for manifestation scrolls instead. The monster hurtled at Rusty with bone-rattling speed, its whole form surging as a single, terrifying wave. In a heartbeat they're gone. Rusty unleashes a bizarre chemical cocktail that either cloaks the monsters from sight or dissolves them into nothing. Yuri and Roy face the maze as Rusty rips into his explanation. Watch manifestation in action as belief forges real results. The scrolls trigger a return function that hurls parts of monsters into another realm, then snatches them back and drops them somewhere else. It's a bizarre, tangled trick, but their rock-solid confidence makes it impossible to doubt. One savage move from Rust shattered the battle. He notes these sky salmon dwarf the armored salmon he'd faced before. From the way they slice through the sky, he deduces their advanced fins lock these fearsome creatures into razor-perfect balance in flight, and their heart scales appear to contain faint traces of magic. Rusty stares at the Sem, stunned that they've soaked up magical energy from the air to generate dynamic lift. The revelation electrifies him. Moments later, he charges to obliterate the beast, lifting the crushing weight from Colin's shoulders. He launches into distributing the scrolls. In the comm, we spot Leitna, the diligent man who sometimes runs the food storeroom, whipping up meals one moment and going toe-to-toe with the team the next. Leitna has been frantically tending the fallen bees, yet their numbers keep swelling like an unending tide. Harkness, a skilled warrior of the combat corps, dubs him Commander Leitna and volunteers to be bait to set up a surgical strike on the flying salmon. Leitna flat-out refuses, insisting there's no need to break their circle. Leitna slings his axe at the salmon, ironclad resolve burning in his veins. Martinez locks eyes with him, hungry for orders, as an endless tide of terrifying creatures swarms the horizon. Leitner bellowed that Lady Colin had ordered them to hold their ground, and even as disaster clawed at their heels, he placed unshakable faith in her. He locks eyes with Harkness and snaps that they've made it this far by trusting Colin, and they'll keep trusting him. Leitner roars for everyone to hold fast, sparking a surge of courage through the group. Doubt claws at him, urging a quick retreat, but renewed trust in Lady Colin steels his resolve and he plunges back into the fray. The next moment shocks everyone. They stand frozen, jaws hanging open, as a monstrous creature explodes into view. Ripping into the salmon, they hurtled straight at Leitna. He brandished his weapon and barked for everyone to stay on guard. Then it hit them. There was no battle to fight. The salmon keep crumbling and collapsing as chaos rages, and Leitna wonders if Russell's alchemy is behind it. The salmon split apart in an instant, their weapons leaving no impact. Feel the jaw-dropping, unstoppable power Rusty commands. Ask Rust and he'll likely unleash a dry lecture declaring knowledge is power and dissecting chemistry. Sorry, alchemy is what turned that theory into real power. Leitner presses a long-haired young man for a report on losses and injuries, then relief floods him when he hears there were only 12 minor injuries and no deaths. Harkness dubs Leitner commander again, igniting his ire. Leitner snaps for the 1000th time that he's no longer a commander, but everyone still treats him like one. Harkness's shoulders sag as he murmurs, "Are we not really needed anymore?" Leitner freezes for a beat, eyes hardening, then spits, "Fool. What if they couldn't pull the non-combatants to safety? What if the salmon had burst through at once? That would have unleashed catastrophic losses." The fighters roar back into the fray. Don't fixate on your shortcomings. Leitna's sincere words pierce Harkness's stoic exterior, rattling the normally stone-faced, iron-jawed warrior. Leitna growls that every single person is vital, lose even one and the flawless defense crumbles. Leitna presses on and a frantic shout rips through the air, mules under attack. He snatches up 2 or 3 allies and bolts into the fray to take down the remaining foes. Harkness sees the truth. Leitna isn't the commander on paper. He commands through razor-sharp wisdom and iron resolve, yet that very man now frantically scrambles to flee Rust. He howled in agony, tormented by pain he brought on himself, his pride ripped apart, and that wounded pride might be the only thing he still cares about. He screams into the silence, demanding how it all went so wrong, but blinding rage won't let him admit he brought his own downfall. He pins it all on Rusty, insisting his whole world crumbled the instant Rusty showed up. Every inch of Rusty sets his fury ablaze, memories crashing back in a brutal flood. He remembers the day he sprinted to his mother and practically pressed a basket of blooming mushrooms into her hands, those mushrooms mesmerized him. His mother recoiled in disgust and barked that they had to be thrown out before they could spread any further. Realism's parents were brilliant alchemists who poured towering dreams into him. Maybe their relentless pressure and suffocating expectations crushed him into ruin. Classic villain origin, overbearing parents warped him. Wilson clawed through every obstacle and seized command of the Army's alchemy department. And when everyone heaped praise on young Rust, fury detonated inside him. He bled for that rank, then watched a naturally gifted rival bathe in the applause he'd been starving for. Swallowed whole by his thoughts, reality unravels and rusty curses tear from his lips, and he swore everyone who'd hurt him would suffer, vowed to drag them into crushing despair and strip them of dignity, and his hatred for Rusty blazed hotter. Fueled by a burning conviction that everyone crowns Rusty the best just for being born with raw talent. Realism stares down at his knee as unfamiliar scars leap into view, panic clawing through his chest. He gapes at the marks, panic erupting as his mind reels. Desperate, he gulps down several potions. They have no effect. Seething, he downs every last potion in his pack, but nothing improves. His body has started rejecting the very potions he depended on, and Realism now faces a brutal onslaught of challenges. Frustration flared into raw despair as his thoughts spiraled into a frantic storm. He zeroed in on the association. Only they brewed the high-grade potions he needed, and he had to reach the capital fast. With iron resolve, he slams down a spell and tears a parasitic, transmuted horror, the Mixer Meat King, into existence. The hideous beast devours him, warping Realism into a limp hot air balloon with only his head poking out and no lens in sight. The scene is a grotesque, laugh-out-loud sight that screams the sheer oddity of his situation. He commands the creature to haul him to the capital, and unlike his junior colleagues, the Mixer Meats King obeys. Swiftly heading toward the association, it reaches the capital, where Realism tears free of the strange Mixer Meat King and stumbles onto firm ground. Desperate for potions, panic claws at him. His jury-rigged getup could draw the guards' gaze. Cutting through the streets in tattered clothes, he snags whispers about the recent battle. Curiosity ignited, if he can dash to the corner up ahead, he'll find the Alchemist Association and snatch the potions he needs. He rounds the corner and his knees buckle. The building that once housed the Alchemist Association stands in smoking, shattered ruin, and disbelief shakes him to the core. Realism clutches memories of his devotion to that place as everything he'd worked for splinters away. Just then, a shadowy figure cloaked in darkness surged out of the rubble. The stranger slams up an invisible barrier around them, trapping them, then strides forward with a cold, unblinking intensity. The hooded figure hunched forward, dissecting the Realism with razor focus and mapping its creeping spread. He grins and confesses the SAM attack that obliterated the association was a chance accident, and it played perfectly into his hands. Realism stunned snaps, "Who is he?" Cloaked man scoffs and waves it off, insisting he's no one of consequence. Realism betrayed us, delivering faulty magic circuits. Before Realism can even react, the hooded figure clamps a hand over his face, hoists him like a ragdoll, and siphons every last drop of his life force. He hails the demon coiled in his chest, roaring at Realism's uncanny knack for turning fungi into lethal magic. He flicked his finger and Realism's wounds flared open, stabbing him with white-hot agony. The hooded figure warps reality into a writhing monster, then vanishes into the shadows. Moments later, a crowd surged, encircling Realism, sprawled and unconscious. Spores poured from Realism's body, crawling over him as he convulsed and ripped into a savage, monstrous version of himself. Cry of alarm shreds the air, the crowd panics and scatters. Dazed and barely present, Realism stares as people bolt and flings a desperate hand for help. Soldiers storm in, barrels locked on him. Chaos explodes as reality scrambles to accept his new existence. Oblivious to the danger he now poses, Captain Harold bellows for his troops to lock their sights on the demon. Moments later, gunfire rips through the air as everyone locks their sights on Realism. Dismay crashed over Harold as bullets ricocheted harmlessly off the alchemist's body, just as the reports warned. Realism has twisted into a demon, and magic bullets splinter uselessly against him. Harold snaps the assault to a halt. They're already understaffed, and if Realism is a demon, the Alchemist Association could be crawling with more. He roars an order. His troops snap on magic circuits that transmute elements into searing fire and unleash it as one devastating, single-focus blast. Realism claws at their minds, begging them to see he's still human, blind to the fact they'll never believe him. In a heartbeat, the soldiers loosed a thunderous volley, Harold's gaze locked onto every flying shot. Frustration snapping, he orders his men to stop firing and unsheath their swords. The plan is savage and simple: charge the demon. Now staring down a line of resolute soldiers, Realism feels a cold wave of fear crash over him. The thought of his impending fate detonates panic in him, and before anyone can reach him, he bolts into the sewer and vanishes into the dark. Captain Harold gapes, heart hammering, at the hollow space where the demon stood just a heartbeat ago. Back at camp, Colin bursts in, lays out the wreckage from the sky salmon attacks, and tallies the expected profit from the collected magic stones. He vows to crown those who soar above the rest. In Bellows, Orion Rose step forward. Colin hails them to instantly size up a sky salmon's strength and broadcast the critical details. Despite the risks, she next locks eyes on Leitna. He'd fought relentlessly to shield the fighters, throwing his body between danger and them so not a single soul came away hurt. The retired nurse's iron-willed efforts wrestled the camp's rambunctious members into line, proving his leadership was still razor-sharp. Colin roared his approval. Rusty had neutralized the sky salmon in a heartbeat and saved the camp from any more harm. He snatched disaster from the brink, and Colin lunged forward, tears in her eyes, choking out a raw, heartfelt thank you. The alchemist reels as the whole camp explodes into applause, cheers ricocheting around him. Regret over Realism slipping away loosens its grip, and a small, sincere smile breaks across his face. Colin's voice cut through the room. She'd filed a formal complaint with the Alchemist Association over Realism's attack. She snaps that countless onlookers probably watched the sky salmon rain down on the capital. They unleashed an assault that crippled the Alchemist Association. Rusty kept replaying his old home in his mind. He'd sworn never to return, but news of the turmoil yanked a restless spark to life inside him. Seeing the royal castle falter, he clenches his jaw and snaps, "Don't wait for orders, act now." They need to spring into action now and start pouring the magic crystals into circulation. Colin agrees without hesitation, even if it piles more work onto Rust. Rust lights up, clearly thrilled to take it on. He pitched the plan. A few days later, Colin's camp reconvenes. She slams down the news: the next shipment of Kaguro fruit will arrive soon. They'll throw themselves into forging a road straight to their future. The lord of the neighboring dominion has thrown his weight behind the plan and is flooding the land with colonizers. They'll hammer out the details soon, riding on their steady support. Thunderous roar of applause erupts, then the crowd scatters. Later, Rusty collapses into his tent, relief washing over him after a grueling day. People swarmed his path, stopping to talk until a wave of shyness washed over him. He's definitely not used to this kind of attention. His eyes snap to the baby beast in its cage. His jaw drops as wings erupt from its back, and its skin slews away completely. Amazement rips through him. Could this creature be a dragon, not just a lizard? He'd never laid eyes on a dragon before. A jolt of truth slams into him. That little beast has probably been a baby dragon all along, and now he's frozen, not knowing what to do next. Hunger gnaws at the baby dragon, but when Rusty shoves a brick toward its snout, it sniffs and bats it aside on the spot. Rusty bets the dragon craves meat, and his mind snaps to the monster scraps he'd been stashing for crafting. He spots the baby dragon glued to the potions and grins, hatching a daring plan. With Rose's help, the alchemist presses a tiny, safe dose of potion to the baby dragon's lips, and to his relief, the hatchling gulps it down. Most creatures, Kippo included, would gag at the taste. Rust, curiosity burning, leans in and asks the little dragon if it wants another sip of the potion. He snapped a transcribe scroll open, ready to scan its health just to be cautious. He orders Rose to watch the dragon, poised to spring into action if things go wrong. He snatches the scroll, unfurls it, and tears through the reading material. Nothing dangerous, no harmful effects. Confusion explodes inside him. He whips his head back at the baby dragon. He thought maybe it's time to christen it. Later, Rusty joins the commander for lunch and, like it's nothing, drops that there might be a dragon in his camp. Dragons are mostly legend now. If that thing's really a dragon, it'd be the first to show itself in generations. The alchemist swallows hard and confesses he can't be certain. He remembers the beast's razor-sharp cunning the moment he hauled it to safety. That spark convinced him it could indeed be a dragon. Colin scoffs, insisting that spurning grass doesn't prove the beast's intelligence. Rusty nods, eyes flashing. He vows to sink his teeth into its intelligence and probe it deeper. Colin smirks, feeling the decision snap into place. The alchemist admits he nearly set the creature free the instant he suspected it was a dragon. He dares to believe he can forge a bond with it. Colin reels, eyes wide, and fires back. Form a contract with a dragon, that's just a fairy tale, right? The alchemist smirks and declares fairy tales are mostly fabrications that still hide shards of truth. Colin's breath catches. Could those contracts actually exist? Rusty vows to her he'll lock down every safety and triple-check every step before he touches a thing, and Colin promptly greenlights the experiment. Hold up, Rusty's excitement hasn't erupted yet. She teases she'll be there when it goes down. He grins and agrees. Knowing Colin's curiosity burned bright, Colin tells him to let her know the moment he's ready. She spits out rusty taunts, only here for the spectacle. Colin beams, confessing she's thrilled to see it, just because. Later, Colin bursts into the alchemist's tent, Rowan and Ariento hot on his heels. Rusty asks why they're here and Rohan snaps that they're on guard duty. The reply hits him. She's been wary of that beast from the start, so he wonders if she dislikes lizards. Rowan edges closer to the baby beast for a better look, but Rusty cuts her off in an instant, assuring her it's safe, and she whispers a soft sorry. The alchemist reels as her eyes go matte, the familiar magical glow snuffed out. Her foresight lies silent. Every sign screams that a showdown with the baby dragon is unlikely. Rusty snapped, "Stay behind, Hippo." He smirks, convinced Colin will hold her own. She's the strongest here. Colin snaps, eyes blazing, "How will you forge a contract with a dragon?" He snaps that if it's a real dragon, weak alchemy will fizzle out, and blasting it with stronger alchemy could actually wound it. Alchemy's dead. He whirls to the girls and snaps, "Do you know anything about primordial magic?" Eerie snarls that it's all about life, blood is the medium it paints with. Rusty reveals his senior dove into primordial magic, and now he's turning those ancient lessons into raw, dangerous power. His senior proclaimed the ancient tales of humans and dragons could be tied to this magic. The dragon's call rips through the air, shattering the silence. Ari cut in, snapping that the alchemist would ramble on if left unchecked. Arya tossed out an apology, but the gleam in her eyes screamed she'd savored his explanation. With the task blazing in their mind, Rusty pivots to the beast and launches the experiment, imploring Rose to unlock its cage. Recognition hits him. Though young, the creature is a dragon. It could shred him in an instant, and even with Rose poised to leap in, dread churned in his gut. He thrust a scrap of potion toward the baby dragon, and Colin blurted, "You're using that as bait for the contract, aren't you?" Before she could say more, the other girls clapped hands over her mouth as the little beast gulped down the costly elixir. Rusty kicked himself. He should have packed the concentrated magic element solutions, the lifeblood that turns ordinary ingredients into high-quality potions. Those solutions were brutal to brew. His thoughts snapped to the formulas he stashed at the Alchemist Association, praying they're still locked down. He snaps back into focus and the alchemist remembers. Forging a contract taps straight into the dragon's primordial magic. As the old fairy tales and ancient myths whisper. Moments later, he yanks out a razor-sharp knife. He slammed the truth at the jewels. It's carved from horned horn. He leans in, eyes blazing, and declares that per legend the contract ritual erupts the moment a human offers their blood, his face a mask of iron resolve. He pressed the cold blade to his wrist, breath hitching as he steeled himself to nick the skin. Rusty slices his wrist with the knife, the blade's etched grooves pulling the blood along by capillary action as he tries to form a blood crest, a design made from his own blood. He roared his name and spelled out his intent. Just as they finally forge a bond with the dragon, the unthinkable strikes. The instant he declared it, ancient symbols erupted before him, the sight jolting and bewildering, and each sigil screamed with unmistakable purpose. Colin zeroes in on his reaction and demands, "You noticing that?" Confusion slammed into the alchemist, twisting his mind into knots. He whirls to the girls and fires, "Do you see anything?" They shake their heads, "Nothing." He watches a polygonal plate materialize right before his eyes and blurts out that he has no idea what it is. The alchemist hunched over the plates, raking his gaze across symbols that wore the guise of alchemy rings but weren't genuine. They ripple like liquid, and the dragon's urging dares him to reach out and touch them. Colin jabbed, "Can your magic eye sense anything?" Ari focused, yet the bizarre phenomenon revealed itself only to Rusty. Could this be the primordial magic they've been whispering about? Meanwhile, Rusty faces locked onto completely unfamiliar symbols, minds racing to decode them. He can't stop picturing each touch wrenching a different meaning out of those strange letters. Rusty steels himself and moves with razor-sharp caution. Curiosity claws at him until he dives headfirst into danger. He presses his fingers to the glowing symbols, they twist and snap into new shapes, and his mind darts, are their numbers determined by the pattern? Doubt claws at him, he has no clue how their system works or what another touch might trigger. He locks eyes with the baby dragon and a cold jolt hits him, it already understands what's unfolding. The alchemist spots a glow seeping from his wrist wound, slams his hand onto the plates again, and the whole tent explodes into blinding light. When the light dims, Rusty freezes as a blazing tattoo erupts across his hand. A tiny hatchling burst into a toddling dragon, that same emblem still blazing across its chest. Stunned by the sudden growth, he runs a hand down the dragon's flank, deciding it must have a name. He plucks safe from sacred and look from one who flies. They call it Saluk, he's just sealed a binding contract with the dragon. Late at night, Colin blindsides Rusty by declaring she's coming to his tent. Her turning up this late is unheard of, and the alchemist's surprise flickers across his face as she saunters in clutching a bottle and mentions they haven't hung out lately. She steps forward and with surgical care plucks a single utensil from the box, mindful that Rusty is obsessively picky about which tools touch his experiments. The alchemist flashes a grin, accepts her gesture and admits he can't say no, then vows his utensils are scrubbed spotless and perfectly safe. Colin leans in, snacks. She grins, she'd slipped them past Rusty and yanks out a bag bulging with raw meat and glistening fish. Rusty, electrified by her thoughtfulness, asks Rose to craft a tiny, intimate dining nook. Minutes later, they're seated at the table. Colin pours him a drink and spots Say wandering freely through the tent. He thrusts the drink toward the dragon. It swooped in and landed on the alchemist's shoulder, settling there as Colin gaped, stunned by the fierce, unmistakable bond sparking between them. Doubt claws at her, did his potions cause it? She watches as Sailor gulps one down. She swallows it anyway, she knows most potions taste like damp grass and are utterly foul, while Rusty feigns outrage at Colin's jab about his bruise. He reads her teasing like an open book. They slammed their glasses together, toasting the forging of new bonds. Gratitude swelled in the alchemist's chest for Colin. If she hadn't pulled him out, he'd still be stuck at the Alchemist Association, chained to the same grinding routine, or blazing a brand new trail. Remembering how much he owes her, Rusty lifts the drink, joy bursting in his chest, then the sip betrays him, he chokes and shock explodes through him. He fires the question at Colin, what is it? She grins, it's called free spirit. Colin warns the drink will ignite anything. She refuses to taste it, calls it a waste, but the burn in the air proves its power. When Rusty starts choking, Rose snaps, dilute it with water. He stirs the glass and keeps sipping, forcing his palate to accept the unfamiliar flavor, then snaps toward Colin, eyes hungry for her verdict. He'd guessed it, she wasn't here just for a drink. As Colin speaks, the alchemist leans in, burning to uncover why she really came. At last, the commander brings up the road construction project she mentioned earlier, pours herself another drink, and declares the plans will kick off in just a few days. Colin lays out her hope that Rusty will step up for the road project, and he leans in, hanging on every word as he realizes this road is the lifeline of their future. The strong drink hit him like a punch, shock and unease, then a sharp new purpose ignited in him. Rusty bolts to join the road construction crew. She's stunned at how effortlessly Colin handles her drinks. Swamped by her duties as a feudal lord, she steps forward and extends a drink to the dragon as if to say, look. He chuckles at her attempt to bond. Convinced that's what friends do, he plants himself at her side and soaks up the night's laughter. Next morning, Rusty's pep drained from him. Since sealing the contract, dread gnaws at him. He senses something deep inside shift, but his reflection betrays no change. The transcribed scroll erupts, spewing physical data. He swings a pendulum like a diviner, probing the unseen and reading auras, energies, and emotions. The alchemist's mind ignited as he dared to imagine something beyond the known magic elements, and he forged feverish theories about the strange plates that appeared during the contract. Frustration claws at him as he yells, say look, to summon the plate again. The dragon can't do it. Rusty wonders if the plates materialized only to seal the contract. Before he can even form another thought, Area explodes onto the scene, signaling it's time to start road construction. Rusty and Eerie vault onto Hippo and rocket away, while the alchemist snaps at Saylook to stay with Rose while they're gone. His breath catches, Sailor refuses to be left behind, vaulting up and perching on his shoulder to come along. The alchemists swear to haul the dragon with them and surge toward their destination. Along the way, they flicked light, admiring glances at the dragon soaring beside them and gushed about its breathtaking grace. Rusty nods, confessing he never imagined a dragon could move that gracefully, and he's blown away as Saluk cleaves through the sky with effortless grace. Eris roars that he'll be the first in centuries to bond with the dragon. They realized his knowledge stretched far beyond mere alchemy, and she confessed that during the contract ritual they were all blindsided, clueless about what was unfolding. Rusty waves it away, insisting it just sort of happened. His mind snapped back to the cryptic numbers and that semi-transparent plate. He only gave the girls a brief rundown, kept the mythical symbols to himself, and a burning itch to investigate gnawed at him as they traveled. Rusty is haunted by the bizarre phenomena he witnessed. The mysterious plate and its carved symbols scream like the key to the primordial magic bound to the contract, and despite the turmoil churning inside him, the alchemist steels himself to decode those symbols and unearth their secrets. He clings to the hope that time and relentless experiments will unravel the answers and let him grasp the magic binding him to Saluk. For now, he buries himself in building the road ahead, knowing the journey is only beginning. Rusty knows that if he can't replicate his results, they'll be written off as fantasy. He grins at Saluk, happy to see the dragon enjoying itself. Suddenly, Arya blasts an alert at him. Monsters are surging up from below, spotted by her magic eye. She snaps her spear into a ready grip and rockets into a combat stance so fast the alchemist can't help but admire her lightning reflexes. Eric panted that she had clawed her way to victory, narrowly felling a savage multi-monster. Doubt clawed at her was she Rusty, when she'd once breezed through an armored salmon without breaking a sweat. Rusty snaps at Saluk to rocket upward as Ariel screams that two more monsters are closing in, and Rusty yanks Hippo hard to the right. Before he can draw breath, a mutilated creature bursts from the shadows. Picture him plunging down and defeating it with effortless, brutal precision. Relief and amazement surge through the alchemist as the dragon lunges, the two humans frozen by its lightning speed and crushing power, and a tense hush falls over them as they watch that breathtaking strike. They'd heard tales of dragons, but seeing one alive slammed every story they'd been told into dust. They surge up to the fallen monster as Rusty leans in, inspecting it with fierce, razor-sharp focus. He snaps Chimera, a twisted hybrid of a tiny mouse fused with a writhing centipede. Mushrooms might be bursting through its abdomen. A wild mashup of four beasts tore into the region, scorchingly rare and completely unfamiliar. The alchemist's eyes flared, he's certain it's a brand new species. Want to see what has Hippo and Sailor completely riveted. He eyes the Hippo scenes and unease slams into him. Something felt wrong, so Rusty tore into the transcribed scroll. The pages were clean, no trace of poison, no hint of threat. He moves to haul the monster off for further study, but Hippo plants his feet and erupts in fierce opposition, smashing that plan. He demanded they torch the creature instead, incinerating it to obliterate every risk. He spins to Ari and asks if she's okay, pausing to deal with this. Ari snaps back she's in and leaps to help. The alchemists urge her to keep watching instead, while he anoints the Hippo's and Salix's limbs with a whisper-thin bead of potion to shield them from any harm. Rusty sets the monster ablaze, watching his flames swallow it whole. Flames roared, and for a split second he swore he saw something stir at the heart of the blaze. Ari's voice slices the silence, "We're ready to go," and he spins from the smoldering ashes, resolve flaring as he strides on to continue their mission. With the monster felled, the alchemist and his companions surged onward, every step haunted by thoughts of that bizarre creature.